Hello and welcome to this meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. It's the 27th of February at 6:30 p.m. And we have no regrets. Everybody's here, either in person or virtually. And I would invite everybody to join Council in O Canada. Thank you, everybody. In 1820, Indigenous people here began welcoming settlers from all over the empire. Soon they were helping slaves escaping from the United States to settle here too. Today, our Indigenous founding partners are still here enjoying this land with us. They fish and camp under their treaty rights. Indigenous people in their thousands also live with us as neighbors and friends. Our Indigenous white and black settlers created a community with an attractive degree of harmony and prosperity. And in 1857, Ontario gave official recognition to Oakville as a town. At Town Hall, all of these years later, we fly the flag of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation beside the flags of Oakville, Ontario, and Canada. We fly these flags together to acknowledge our origins. People from all over the world are attracted to the livability we have created. We offer newcomers a warm spirit of welcome. We offer everyone our founding story so everyone knows what they are part of. We feel sorrow and distress at acts of racism and intolerance that are suffered across Canada and here at home. We want our future to be equitable and inclusive for everyone. The path of truth and reconciliation can unite us all. Please keep well, stay safe, and let us on Council know of any chance to be helpful to you and yours. And please let us know anytime that you can help increase Oakville's harmony, prosperity, and livability. Madam Clerk, as I said, there are no regrets for this meeting. Our Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Worship. I'm trying to open my agenda, but I do have a conflict on confidential item this evening with respect to the Dundas and Kerr matter. My agenda hasn't opened yet, so I don't know enough.
I believe you may mean Spears and Kerr.
What did I say? Dundas and Kerr.
That's okay.
Which don't meet.
So the clerk will collect, as per the procedure, the clerk will before you leave, collect your form of declaration.
Thank you.
And we will excuse you from participating in that vote.
And we will not be joining Spears and Dundas tonight.
Okay. Maybe there's a call for never mind. A place called Spears and Dundas? All right, Council, could we get a mover and seconder to confirm or correct the minutes of the previous Council meetings of January 30th and February 7th? Councillor McNeice, thank you, and Councillor Longo, thank you. Any objection? There being no objection, that's carried. Thank you. We have no public presentations, but we do have the standing committee reports from the Budget Committee. And there was a delegation listed, but we've been informed that the delegation is not going to join us. And we have a presentation by Budget Chair Councillor Janet Haslett-Thiel. And Councillor Haslett-Thiel, If you want to be seen best by everybody on council, I recommend the center podium as opposed to the side, but you take your pick. They're all available to you.
So Jessica, I'm in your hands. Will that presentation come up? Okay, and am I moving the slides or? Okay.
Advance with the arrow keys, or do you want to say next slide?
On here, I can do it?
Yep.
Okay,
There you go.
thank you. Good evening, Council, Mayor Burton, and staff. It's my pleasure to be here tonight to speak to you in regards to the budget for 2023. The budget recommendation before you achieves the Council's direction of an overall levy increase in line with inflation. It is in fact below inflation. The budget maintains the services and programs the community values, advances infrastructure previously planned, and ensures a state of good repair. The budget does this, keeping our reserve balances at responsible levels for financial stability, given the potential impacts of Bill 23. The budget is built by the town staff reflecting the strategic plan that Council approved in the last term, with the key priorities of livability, an engaged community, accountable government, environment, and mobility. The 2024 budget will reflect a new strategic plan that Council and staff will begin to work on in March. The budget also is based on where we are at in inflation. And as you all know and have experienced in our lives, inflation is impacting our residents and our businesses as they work to recover from the impacts of the pandemic. It will be no surprise to everyone that inflation has been the most significant driver of increases to the base operating funding budget, and that it has impacted our town services and programs and service levels if we did not do what is recommended in this budget today. In addition, our capital project budgets have been under significant pressure due to the rising cost of construction, indicated by the non-residential construction price index increasing by 29% over the last 2 years. These rising costs have proved challenging for our existing capital projects that are at the procurement stage, as supply chain and commodity volatility have had a major impact on pricing and adjustments had to be made. For 2023, the forecasted inflation was over 4%. We shall see. This chart highlights the recommended increase of 3.8%, which is an increase of $27.82 per $100,000 of assessment. And for those listening at home, if you've not watched the video that is on the town's website that explains about how assessment impacts the budget and how you can do these calculations, I encourage you to go there. As a reminder to us all, the town's share of the overall tax levy budget is about 42%, with the region receiving 37% for the service they provide us and 21% going to education. And also as a reminder of the important services the region provides, remember that it includes long-term care, children's services, community safety and well-being, emergency planning, social assistance and employment, housing services, infrastructure, construction, paramedic services, public health, regional roads, services for seniors, waste management, wastewater collection and treatment, water purification and distribution, police services, and more. You are getting value for your dollar. This slide shares with you the approved tax increases in our neighboring towns. It is important to note that there are different services and service levels in those communities, and this is not a direct apples to apples comparison. However, it does mean an Oakville taxpayer will see less of an impact on their tax bill, and that is good news for all. Should Council decide to make additions to the levy tonight, I would suggest it not be based on benchmarking against our neighbours, but on whether it is an important service or an investment that is necessary and sustainable, and if now is the right time to put it in place, given the economic pressures on our residents, businesses, and the known uncertainties of Bill 23. So overall, this budget invests $526.9 million in services. And this chart highlights the operating budget and capital budget for the services that we are providing to the public. When looking at the capital budget, you can see that the investment made in key areas has some significant dollars. And the primary ones at the top are infrastructure planning, Oakville Transit, parks and open space, and facilities and construction management. During budget, we were asked and received a great report on reserves. And this chart reminds us that each reserve listed on the screen has specific purposes for which the funds are collected, whether that be for the costs of growth like DCs or for replacing key infrastructure like our capital and equipment reserves. I know you will all agree it is important for the town to be looking at the long-term financial picture and that we actively plan how and when we use these funds. Staff have provided an estimated forecast for us. For 2024, in addition to bus electrification and free transit annualization, we have costs to operate a community center or partial costs and the annualization of maintenance of the sports fields at 16 Miles Sports Complex, software maintenance, operating impacts for growth vehicles and equipment, and more. For 2025, we have the annualization of costs again for the new community center and library, as well as the electric fleet expansion, maintenance of new infrastructure in new subdivisions. Future unknown service levels changes are not in this budget or known in this estimate, and they certainly don't include the impact of Bill 23 at this point. Bill 23. One of the very important things that we've all made clear throughout the budget is that Bill 23 was not part of the staff's calculation of what the levy would be. But they were able to provide us in December with some indication about the potential impacts of Bill 23, and you see those on the slide. Reduced collections of DCs, reduced collection of parkland fees, and so it's important to note that Bill 23 will have long-term impacts, not the immediate impacts on the levy, but we must be watchful of what is coming. So I like this chart because this chart really helps put in perspective that while we have a healthy reserve right now, and I understand there's accounting principles that require us to do it the way we're doing it, right now we are showing that at the end of 2022, we had $184.5 million in the DC reserves. However, $122.5 million are already in approved commitments. In other words, the money has been spent or about to be spent. On this chart, what I want to draw your attention to is that as our DC balances decline, and they will, we put growth projects at risk. And I also want to note that the region has prepared a report highlighting that hard decisions will need to be made relative to advancing growth if we are not made whole from the impacts of Bill 23, and these will include future tax levies. The Budget Committee met several times and then deliberated on the proposed budget. After receiving public delegations, a further staff report addressing a wide range of questions, which I trust Council has had an opportunity to review, all 85 pages. So staff did some hard work for us and brought forward some very good information, which I also encourage the public to review. As shown in the minutes, the following items were recommended to be added to the capital budget by the Budget Committee. with the advancement of electrification of transit as the most significant investment on the list. I'd also point out that that advancement of electrification of transit is our commitment to reducing our carbon emissions going forward. The next two slides will share with you service enhancements or adjustments that support or build on our commitments to livability, an engaged community, accountable government, environment, and mobility, the pillars in which the budget was built on. And while I will not spend a long time on this, I do want to highlight that in some instances, these are not large amounts of money, but they are necessary to sustain good services. We all love the Santa Claus Parade. They needed an injection. The sidewalk snow clearing downtown, it's important from our viability and safety on that new streetscape. It's a sad fact that we have to perhaps have a waste dumping education program to remind people to not put their own garbage in our parks, but it is an opportunity to enhance the importance of reduce, reuse, recycle, and management of waste. We're going to winterize a washroom building which supports the commitment we made to more active outdoor living throughout all seasons. And there's the bigger number on there, which is the active transportation traffic calming initiatives being advanced so we can move forward more quickly on some of the planned active transportation projects and allow different mobility options for our residents. And finally, the Pink Project's Women's Washroom Products was a presentation that was brought to us, but several of us had learned about it, that provides sanitary products in our public facilities. And it is time to do this. And it will create equity for all women. And I know that the presentation that the young ladies make was very powerful, but it's also was a good reflection of providing us with insights about the impact some of our choices have on individuals. Other service level enhancement adjustments included a discussion on transit youth, riding free from May forward, and you see two numbers there, 275,000 and 550,000. So why I've broken it out that way is the overall from May to December is 550. However, half of it is going to go on the levy, and half is in tax stabilization. And the same is true for transit seniors. The addition of a revenue tax coordinator, which will support future needs. There was a request for an intergovernmental affairs position, postage distribution, community activation grants, which is an opportunity to seed and encourage some neighborhood opportunities and small groups. And we're going to get a report back on community activation grants along with special events planning and from our commissioner. And then finally, a natural heritage planner. Oh, sorry, leave that up. Several of the adjustments proposed were only supported by 3 committee members and/or were not unanimous. One of the most contentious recommendations was how we increase transit ridership. Is free the right solution now, or should we have the research and recommendations of a professional transit staff on what is appropriate for Oakville as we strive to provide a sustainable, successful transit program? Other additions that were contentious are whether we need an additional headcount in the mayor's office for intergovernmental affairs, or if it is already incorporated in the budget provided and corporate staff support, and whether we need to add to the levy possible litigation fees, unknown at this time, or do we continue to rely on a robust tax stabilization reserve as needed? Additionally, what are the policies related to path lighting? And finally, are additional community benefit funds for council needed? Tonight is council's opportunity to explore further options or to endorse all or part of what is before you. The standing committee minutes procedure allows you to separate out items, to debate them, and ask staff further questions. While staff do need a decision on what will impact the levy tonight, You can choose to defeat items on the recommendation and then refer them back, noting that the funding would come from tax stabilization. In other words, you can pause to ensure you have the necessary information to make an informed decision and still see changes in 2023. The Budget Committee recommendation is before you. It does speak to an overall property tax increase below inflation. And as I've mentioned, it is less than our neighboring communities. The budget as presented maintains the services and programs residents and businesses value at a service level that they appreciate. I want to thank the public for their delegations and questions we received at the open house. All of their efforts reinforce we have a community that cares about the future, offer great insights, and we value their engagement. While not all suggestions were incorporated into the budget recommendation, there is significant work planned that you can participate in, such as the master plan for parks, recreation, culture, and libraries, and the transportation plan. And there are more. And I encourage you to come forward and continue to share your ideas and your insights. They help us make better decisions. I want to thank the commissioners who, through our questions, helped inform the public of ongoing work related to climate change, mobility, community services, economic development, asset management, and community planning. And to the finance team that provided us with their professional expertise, my deepest thanks. To the committee, I thank you for the thoughtful questions and for engaging in the debate, which enabled us to share more with the public about what is in the budget, how the budget is formed, and to help the public understand the investments we're making. Finally, the Budget Committee, for the first time, has recommended that we meet again in April to debrief on the 2023 budget process and provide recommendation for staff's consideration. We hope you will join us as we work to continuously enhance the budget process, their presentations, the documentation, and public engagement. And with that, Mayor Burton, I turn it back to you for the Council to consider the budget recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, Councillor Haslett-Thiel, and thank you for your presentation. I need a mover and seconder to put the budget recommendation on the table, on the floor. Councillor Grant and Councillor Knoll, thank you. The time is now if you want to separate anything. Councillor Duddick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to separate items I and J as they pertain to the transit item that was shared through the budget.
All righty. Councillor Ilger.
Thank you. Through Mayor Burton, item K, please. I'd like to separate.
So Councillor Ilger, Councillor Duddick identified that hers deal with transit. As your chair, I have a non-detailed version. If you could just identify what K is, please.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's for the intergovernmental affairs position for a portion of the year for the office of mayor and council.
Okay, thank you. Any other separations?
Not on the operating side, on the capital side, I do.
Yes.
And that would be on the Holton Park, the lighting, not the snow plowing on the levy portion, but the capital portion, the 83,000.
Okay. Anything else? Councillor Knoll.
I don't know the item number specifically, but I would like to, I guess it's not really reconsider, but I would like to consider the community benefit allowance increase for councillors.
So that's not in the budget.
I know.
So in order to do that, you need to amend the budget.
Okay.
I think I'm going to, for orderliness, I'm going to ask you to hold that till we're done with separation.
Sure, I can do that.
Councillor Adams.
I was only going to try to help my colleague, Councillor Knoll, as I have some terminology from staff that would be helpful for your request. Thank you.
Okay, it's good when we're all working together. Oh, thank you. Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you. Could we separate out item E, the $18,000 for the education for household waste being dumped in parks?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
All right. I'll ask again, are there any other separations? All righty, thank you. Councillor Duddick, you have the floor.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, Mr. Chair. First, I want to thank Councillor Janet Haslett-Thiel for a very well and robust budget process. I had the opportunity to sit on the public comments, as I believe Councillor Adams and I believe Councillor Elgar, for the virtual component of that, and it was very beneficial to hear directly from members of the public in regards to their concerns and their asks. In regards to the item that I've asked to separate, it's not that I don't want to do this, but it's the time that we're choosing to do this. I think we're really on a very precarious slope right now, what with Bill 23, and I'm glad that the chair of the Budget Committee sort of gave a brief overview of it. The fact that we are already, before even this budget is approved, running a $33.2 million deficit subsidizing Oakville Transit. And that will add 1.1 million to it, regardless of whether it's from the tax stabilization or whatever pot it comes out of. It's still taxpayer dollars. And as I say, the fact that we're sort of facing a looming future in terms of increased expenses, I think the time is that we need to hold firm, do everything we can to make this budget come in as the most cost-effective for people who are struggling to put food on the table and pay their bills. I feel it's not a good time. I think there's other opportunities that we may be able to use, because I had the benefit of speaking to my colleagues in the north in Ward 7, and it gave me a better understanding as to the needs of their particular demographic in terms of transit. But I think we could use other vehicles, mind the pun, by which to attain that. So at this point, I will not be supporting that in the presented budget.
Thank you very much, Councillor Duddick. Councillor Chisholm.
We can't hear.
Let's try that again. My apologies. Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. I'm full support of Councillor Duddick's non-support of this, of the transit monies to be looked at in the budget. We're just in the process in the capital side of spending $18 million to expand the facility, which is an enormous amount of money for the budget. I know it's in the capital side, but it is an impact for the taxpayer and know which way you look at it. We have it. I totally agree with Councillor Thiel with respect to having a report, a fulsome report come back. Let's look at the data. Let's look at the information before we make a decision like this. This is, to me, a lot of money that it's been put on the table for this, and I just don't want to make a knee-jerk reaction and approve this. I think we need to do more work on it. The timing couldn't be any worse, being Bill 23. So that's all I have to say with it, but I do support Councillor Duddick's non-support.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with my previous colleagues that just spoke. I fear for the effects that it may have on our on-demand trial that we're going through in several areas of the town. And I don't know what success is going to look like. Is it a 20% lift over pre-pandemic levels or a 40% lift in ridership? I would prefer to see recommendations from our professional staff in terms of the best bang for the buck. Is it giving up our transit revenue, or is it additional routes, additional frequency, a ride share product of some type? And so I concur with my previous speakers on this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. Councillor McNeese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur as well. I cannot support this motion as is. I think it was well-intentioned. I was not on the budget committee, but got to sit through all of the delegations and all of the meetings and learn quite a bit. This came up through a suggestion from Councillor O'Meara. How do we get behavior change among youth to use transit more? And it quickly became, let's make it free for youth, let's make it free for seniors. So I think that's not a good way of transit planning. I think to really build out our system and make it robust, we have to think of how can we increase the frequency, how can we expand the network, how can we make it more convenient. And I'm not against subsidies for certain groups, but I think we need to do our homework first. We heard some good delegations on it that gave us some best practices from Kingston and Burlington, and they had different times of day that they did stuff in different partnerships, and I think those need to be fully explored before we make a decision. Otherwise, there could be some unintended consequences. We also this year have our 5-year master plan updates for transit and transportation, so I think that's a good opportunity to get some additional engagement on it. I think there might be some other groups that may need some assistance, whether it's the food insecure and accessing grocery stores on weekends like other cities do. I think there's also certain locations that could use additional support. So I think we need a professional report back from our staff, and if this motion's defeated, I'd be happy to refer it to staff for more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McNeese. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I too would just like to start by thanking Councillor Haslett-Thiel for her work on the Budget Committee. She came out to Ward 1 and stayed for about 3 hours, 2 hours longer than she was going to, talking to residents, and I really appreciated that. So I thank you very much for your commitment to what has been a trying year for a budget. Just to sort of reiterate what I had said in the committee as well. I'm not opposed to free transit for kids, and I know our Ward 7 colleagues had some individuals emailing us as well with regards to seniors. I think that should probably be in the plan at some point. I just think we need a plan first before we do that, and I think that's the key. We heard specifically from staff when asked, would you prefer we wait until we've got a plan? And they said yes. You know, politicians are not transit experts. They are, or they are going to solicit information from the experts. And I think we dive headfirst into dangerous waters, presupposing we know more than they do at that level. So, but again, it's not do we give free transit to youth and to seniors. It's just how do we go about doing it in the best way that achieves our goal, and our goal is to increase ridership of public transit. That is the goal, bar none. And how we get there, I think, needs a holistic approach. And we should be doing it out of the stabilization reserve so we can figure out what works best. And then once we've got the plan, fold it into the levy, and then have a plan that we move forward with. So I, too, will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Meara. Councillor Elgar?
Thank you. Through you, Member Burton. I also, at the beginning, just like to thank Councillor Janet Haslett-Thiel for chairing the committee. What I found the most interesting, after we had completed all the delegations, she had another meeting and we went through every idea that delegations asked for and staff answered. And I know it took a lot of time, but I think it was really well worth it, and it was very well done. With regard to transit, I supported the transit additions at the Budget Committee. I have to tell you, most of the complaints of transit are there's nobody on the buses. And jokingly, I've often said we should put a shrink wrap of showing the buses on the windows just full of people. And that's why something has to change. Now, I got to say, support was not given to us by the staff. It was a council decision. And, you know, I've listened to actually what Mayor Burton said last week. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And, you know, I think that's a pretty good statement. And so therefore, from what I'm hearing, and I'm hearing from constituents at all in the last week, I also will not support the added money for the transit at this point in time. But I do hope that staff come back this year in a not too distant future with a new plan of how we can possibly get more people on the buses so that we're not going to be subsidizing more than, you know, right now it's $33,177,400. So I think we have to do something. We have to do it soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Councillor Grant?
Thank you. I'd also like to thank Councillor JHT for her work on the Budget Committee. Having watched many of the delegations, it was great. Seeing how we were able to accommodate along the proposals brought forward. I unfortunately am going to go against the consideration that Councillor Duddick has brought up. As one, I believe, the only person on council who takes transit, we spend money here expanding roads. We talk about parking and how we're concerned about parking, and we know that traffic is not sustainable the way it is right now. We can't keep expanding roads. We can't keep trying to fix the problem in that manner. Transit does seem to be the only option for the future, and we've learned, especially through great presentations that we had, including from Safe Streets Halton, who gave several suggestions and examples that, you know, if we have more riders, we can increase consistency, we can increase frequency, we can increase more people on buses. And one of the best ways of doing that is to offer services to the seniors who are people on a budget who would likely enjoy the fact that they will have cheaper transit. Our transit is already more expensive than the other in the areas, especially for youth. And that's the other side of the coin. We need to get our youth onto buses, and one of the best ways is to show them that this is a convenient way of traveling through the town. Now, again, if it's a choice between, well, I guess I'll buy a car someday, or hey, I'm just going down the street, the bus is free, I'm going to hop on that. I think that the more we get people used to the idea of just hopping on a bus and moving, the better we can be. So frankly, I think that this is a good solution. I think this is the best path that we have to go forward. If we find that there are problems along the way, certainly we can alter what we're doing, but sometimes you can overanalyze a problem until the situation gets worse. Right now, we have an opportunity to take care of the situation now and correct course as we go along. And so I, unfortunately, will not be supporting the removal of these items. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor Knoll?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll also be speaking in favor, how do you say this, in favor of not agreeing with Councillor Duddick. So I don't know how, just joking.
Just to help everybody, to be clear, what's being debated is a part of the motion which was duly moved by Councillor Grant and Councillor Knoll. Yep. So if you want to adopt the free transit program, you vote yes, and you speak yes. And if you want to prevent it, you vote no, and you speak no. So I hope that helps everybody.
I was partly just joking, but, and also I find it kind of weird that I'd be voting against the motion that I seconded. But anyway, I'm speaking in favor of free transit, to be clear. A couple points. First of all, ditto, and thank you to my colleague for a very well reasoned argument in favor of free transit. I also want to, before I get into my arguments, I want to also thank Janet for a great job as our chair, and thank you for the hard work that she put into it. I know it was a steep learning curve for her, and it certainly didn't show. So thank you for your work, and thank you to the whole Budget Committee for the work they did. I was in on all the committee's meetings virtually, and I was impressed with the level of engagement and questions that came up. So thank you for your hard work as well. I think that some of us have been around this council table a really, really long time. And in that really, really long time, we've constantly wrestled with the question, how do we get more people on the buses? So for 22 years, this has been a question that we've constantly tried to find solutions for. When this proposal first got floated, I was against it. And I spoke to Janet about it a few weeks ago when she called to talk about the war. I was sort of wishy-washy, and I wasn't quite clear on it. But I've given this one a heck of a lot of thought. And this is what I've concluded. We need to make a paradigm shift, and we need to make it soon. We keep talking about climate change initiatives and all of those really important environmental steps we have to take in order to reduce fossil fuel use. Public transit is one of the best ways to do that, particularly with the investment that we're making on the electrification of our fleet. So I think that one of the best ways that you can get people to start getting on the bus is to infiltrate their minds when they're young. If we can get kids on buses today, if we can make it as automatic as walking on a sidewalk or using any other municipal service, then we have a really good chance of having them avoid that early first car purchase, possibly the second car purchase when they're a young family, et cetera. And we can continue to wait until something else happens, or we can just make a bold step forward and say it's time to make that change and to start the paradigm shift today. In terms of the seniors piece of this, for the most part, a lot of these seniors aren't riding buses anyway. So the idea of giving free seniors transit is really, it's not about losing money. It's really about activating seniors who we really, it's in our best interest to do that as a society. The more seniors are active, the more seniors are getting out, the longer they're living, the less health care they require, the less likely they have to be institutionalized in long-term care, et cetera. And so these investments today help build stronger seniors in our communities, seniors that are more independent, seniors that have greater quality of life. So I have been all over the map on this issue from when it first got raised to today, but today my vote is firmly in favor of this free transit initiative. It sounds like, based on my rough count of votes, that it will probably fail today, and that's okay. But at least I think we've had the conversation, and we can get to hopefully yes at some point in the very near future. So thank you for listening. I would encourage you to reconsider if you're thinking, if you're strictly thinking about this from a money perspective. I think this is an investment in our kids, it's an investment in our seniors, and it's an investment in the future of our environment.
Thank you, Councillor Noel. Councillor Sheik.
Thank you, Worship. I'm sorry to say that I won't support the Councillor Dudek for this motion for this takeout for consideration about free trans. So I want to share something in my perspective. So we cannot wait to implement this proposal to provide the free riders for seniors. I will use the seniors for examples. So first is urgency. Seniors are vulnerable group and their needs cannot be postponed. Many seniors in our community are facing the financial, physical, mental health, social challenges that made it very difficult for them to access essential service. Delaying the implementation of policy to provide a free ride would be only of this challenge and the negative impact their well-being. As I know, there's many seniors, especially in our world, or as I know, there's almost town-wide, especially the newcomers families, 3 generations, they live together. All these seniors come to Canada, they have culture, language barriers, a lot of things. Most of them barely to drive. This is something very different with other people in our town. So you cannot imagine some senior parents, grandparents, they can even go out for shopping once a week with their children because they can drive for them to some grocery store. They cannot drive themselves. But now town, they have one Monday for free senior for free riding for senior on Monday. I can see many families, including my families, their parents rushing out and in only on Monday because they can gather in together with their friends, using the bus, go to grocery store to have some shopping only on Monday. This is something I share this experience. And the second one, this is social responsibilities. As a member of the society, we have to responsible take care of our vulnerable populations, including seniors. And also how we can promote equity and inclusive. So providing free ride for seniors is a matter of social inclusion and equity. Seniors, especially those from minority groups, often face, as I just said before, language and cultural barriers that they make it very difficult for them to access the town services and participate fully in our community. So this is something overall I think is delaying the implementation of this policy free ride for seniors and youth would be a disservice to our vulnerable population and would negatively impact the community as a whole. So I urge the council to think about this so we can do this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shi. Councillor Lischina.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too would like to echo everybody's congrats to Councillor Hazlitt-Thiel for a job well done. I also attended all of the meetings, and same thing, was really thinking about this one because you know, fiscal responsibility is really important to me. And you know, I recall at one of the meetings when we asked transit staff about this, and I said, whatever we've tried in the past hasn't really worked. And it seemed to me that, you know, strategy looking right now is trying to get to pre-COVID days. Well, those weren't good enough. And so thinking about, you know, how do we increase ridership? And, you know, today there was an email sent from Safe Streets Halton, which was pretty convincing to me when it comes to numbers do increase because there's been a pilot done in Burlington, but also the fact that they reminded council that provincial transit funding is tied to transit ridership, 75% versus 30% for population. So the question is that, you know, do we still get funding? And I understand that we do. So if we can increase ridership and start it earlier, I think it will make a difference, because just what I've heard, you know, Councillor Knoll saying, this has been talked about for years, many years before I was here. But this was a really tough decision for me, and I realize it's a lot of dollars, but I think that there will be a change, you know, and if we're talking, you know, everybody talks about climate emergency, and we have to do something about that. And so today's notes from residents, but also really seeing this information from that the funding does also come from the province if you do have a higher ridership. I think it will make sense this time around. And I recall a few years back, this was on the table and never made it. And again, things just, whatever the strategy to date is, just has not worked. And so if this does not work a year or two from now, then we certainly all have the opportunity to come back and say, you know, we have to do something different again. But I think it needs the opportunity for it to actually happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lischina. Councillor Nanda.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to also congratulate and thank you, Budget Chair Janet, for a wonderful job. Very in-depth work that was done. This is, of course, my first budget, being a part of budget meeting, not being on the Budget Council. And for this, I am going to be in support of free transit for seniors and for youth. And specifically, as Councillor Dudek said, that we did have a conversation about the importance that we've had in our area. And one of the biggest reasons is because we've been asked over and over again, and we have a big interest in our ward for this transit. A lot of seniors and even youth have said that we need this transit to be independent. We have families where it's not supportive that they're able to drive, especially their seniors, or sometimes they're even youth. So if we could increase that, that would help them. And again, we're talking about climate change. We're making differences. If this is something that's going to make a difference, then I do believe we need to do this. One other point is the pilot for on demand. We did speak to town staff recently, and they came back and we spoke specifically about where the pilot goes. And we were told from staff that the pilot right now in our ward, it would take the seniors from their home either to the nearest hub within our ward, or it would take them to the nearest hub where there's a bus transit, which means that the seniors would have to go from the on-demand to another bus station and then would have to get onto a bus to complete their ride. So taking that into consideration and taking into consideration what our residents are looking for, and we have a larger senior population and we do have a big youth population, I'm in favor of having this go forward. And I think as some of the councillors have mentioned, if there's anything that we need to change in the future, if we have that ability to do so, then I think we can do it at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nanda. Councillor Haslett-Deal. Councillor Grant's hand is up, but he's a second speaker. Councillor Haslett-Deal.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. I think all of us are concerned about how we increase transit ridership, and I'm not hearing anyone questioning the importance of encouraging youth and educating youth about the benefits of riding on a bus and the importance of finding good solutions for seniors. What I would like to emphasize is that we have snippets of information about different pilots. We have information about some information about ride on demand, but we have not had a report out on ride demand. And we need to make a thoughtful decision here. For example, some of us are aware of what happened in Kingston, but what is not publicly talked about is the fact that they started this more than 10 years ago, and they systematically thought through, how do we increase ridership? And one of the first premises that they put in place was that frequency was critically important to ridership. And in Oakville, frequency is not at the level it needs to be to drive ridership. And so people cannot just hop on a bus in many areas or easily get to their jobs. We have challenges in the transit area that we need transit expertise to help us with. I also want to just point out that there is no need to rush because staff are intent on finding solutions. I think they probably wake up every day trying to get on with being able to do the transit master plan based on what I've figured out in some conversations with the director. And they have the tools, if we give it to them, to come back with a strategy that could move us forward in 2023. So my concern is that we seem to have all of a sudden woken up and said the solution is free. And while I do respect that many members of council have been here for a while and are frustrated that we haven't made progress, I do believe that it is the question we're asking. And I think what was stated by some of my earlier colleagues, you know, what does success look like? Is success the bus is full, but nobody's paying? But we don't have new routes, or we don't have ride on demand because we can't make it work depending on the financial model. We don't have answers to those questions. I'm going to remind everybody that when North Oakville was developed and planned and approved by council, it was meant to be transit friendly. In fact, a large part of the frustrations that we hear is the growing parking issues in the north. Now, perhaps your perception is that now, because we've made it free, that they will get on the bus. But we do not know that. What we do know is that frequency, and as Councillor Nanda pointed out, you have to make transitions to get to different places, are obstacles to people getting on the bus. I also want to point out that it is $2.10 for a senior to ride. So what I would suggest to you is that we can look for a solution that helps those seniors ride if that is the barrier. But I also think it may very well be comfort and education about ride on demand or how to ride a bus or how safe the bus is. Those are all things that should be in a proper report that says once and for all, give us options to increase ridership and get value back for the investment that we have appropriately made to build our transit system. We have not revisited split pass. At one point, Mayor Burton had suggested a great concept, which was called the Freedom Pass, but it went away. So there are multitude of opportunities to provide services and to encourage people to ride. But let's be thoughtful about it. It doesn't mean we are dragging it on. We can put a time frame on it for the staff to come back with tangible solutions, and then we can make an informed decision with the facts, the data, and the alternatives that will achieve success, which is to increase the embracing of transit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hazlett-Thiel. So now I think we're going to go through second timers, Councillor Grant and then Councillor Dudek.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just to our previous speaker, I again need to point out that there is no frequency without ridership. So unless you wish to invest the money in frequency and putting more buses on the road, instead of offering a service to users who actually use the service to allow them to be on there more and to increase that frequency, you're going to spend your money one way or the other. Why not spend it on such a way that at least you're offering that service to the end users? And the reason I want to speak for a second time is because Councillor Knoll is correct. For those of us who've been here for a while, we have seen options. And Councillor Shea actually did bring up the free service on Monday. And so the free senior service on Monday is sort of an interesting thing because that was started by, at the time, Councillors Max Kahn and Councillor Pam Demoff, who now Pam has moved on. Unfortunately, so has Max in his own way. But at the time, the idea was, let's offer this one day of free service to seniors, and if it works out, then we're going to look at this and then offer it all the time to seniors if we can. Well, that was so long ago, and nothing has happened since then. We have taken the time to see that it works. I've been on the buses on a Monday. That is the day that most seniors will get on to do their shopping in the area. So, we have taken the time to look at this. We can either now spend the rest of this time staring at our navel, or we can try and reach for the future. And I'm hoping that this council will see fit to invest this money into reaching towards the future instead of continually gazing at our navels until there's a whole new term of council 20 years down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor Dudek. And then, oh wait, sorry. We have a first timer. So Councillor Grant, if you put your hand down, it'll help me navigate this Hollywood Squares screen we've got to deal with. Thank you. Councillor Dudek and Councillor Knoll, I'm going to put you after first timer, Councillor Adams.
Thanks. I'm going to be, I hope, very brief. Only wanted to point out that we continue to have Freedom Pass. That's a program that still exists. The other, and we've talked a lot about all these different changes and programs that are happening around us, and these are all reasons why we shouldn't proceed. And I'll say that we always have various pilots going on. We always have changes going on to our transportation system. And we could find a reason not to do something every single year, and I think it's time to move on. When it was at committee, my only quibble about the whole thing is I felt that more of it should have been paid for and straight out of the property taxes, and that we shouldn't rely on the tax stabilization reserve. I'm willing to overlook that, and I think that we can handle the change in the upcoming years to handle the financial impact that it'll have on our revenues. So with all those said, I'm happy to continue to support the free transit program that's coming out of the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Dudek and then Councillor Knoll.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like a clarification. My understanding, this was not a pilot. This is what it is. Is that not correct?
This is not a pilot.
Thank you.
I haven't heard any, actually.
So yes, I just heard him refer to pilot after pilot, and we can make decisions afterwards. My thing is, this is not a pilot. There's not a time to look back and say, oh, did it succeed or did it not?
Everyone's entitled to their own interpretation to what the member said. But it remains true that whatever program we adopt as not a pilot is always subject to revision, correction, and improvement. So both sides of this coin, I think, are true.
Okay. My only caution would be when you make something free, taking something away that is free, you think this discussion is bad? Just wait, okay? Because again, why are we going from one day to all of a sudden 24/7? Why are we not doing it in increments and seeing how well that works out? I have a problem, it's going from one thing to just free for all. And it concerns me that we're not doing it based on facts. And, you know, I still can't get over the fact that we have a transit director who's a professional on record stating his preference would be wait until we do our master plan. So I'll just leave that.
Thank you, Councillor Dudek. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you for all the discussion on this item so far. I originally thought that this was going to fail in flames, but it looks like it's going to be really close. So I'm going to give it the old college try just to convince one or two more votes. So a couple quick points. First of all, just a small history lesson. When I joined council back in 2000, we didn't even have Sunday busing. We didn't have holiday busing. Busing was largely like 7:30 a.m. till approximately 8 or 9 p.m. It was terrible. And at the time, I was young, fresh-faced, well, maybe not so fresh-faced, but young and slightly heavier councillor at the time. I tried to push this forward and say, we really need to do something to get people on the buses. Like, it's silly. These buses are, you think they're empty now? Man, they were empty back then. Nobody would use them because they couldn't count on them. Nobody could not wave off the second car because there was no buses when you needed them. There wasn't buses when you wanted to go shopping, when you wanted to go to church. It was a bit of a joke. It took a long time. It took a couple motions. Mine failed. The first one failed. I remember it was my first motion I ever made in this chamber, and it failed. Didn't even get a seconder. It was horrifying. But anyway, a little bit later, and staff, frankly, were opposed to it at the time. They were opposed. They felt it wasn't necessary, that Oakville did not have the transit ridership base. And we tried again later on. Kevin Flynn made the motion. I seconded that time to start the zone bus system. And we did the zone bus system. And the zone bus system proved that there was ridership interest. There was some people interested in actually leaving their homes on Sundays that didn't have cars and on holidays. And then that built into a regular transit schedule that included Sundays and holidays. What's interesting about that at the time was that that was also something that are extremely professional, and they are incredibly professional, incredibly knowledgeable, but very conservative staff who know that they have budgets they have to live up to, didn't recommend almost any of these proposals at the time. They recommended bits and pieces, but they were very, very conservative. It was council that took the initiative to actually spearhead getting the Sunday buses and holiday buses back going again. So now fast forward a couple decades. And yes, I'm still here, and so is Alan. And there's a couple important points. So first of all, we heard just a second ago the chicken and egg comment, or the chicken and egg argument. So Janet Haslett-Thiel mentioned the issue of people don't like our buses or they won't ride the buses because they don't go where you want to go. And then Councillor Grant said, well, you have to have ridership before you can justify it. And that's true. It's a chicken and egg argument. But it's also a supply and demand argument. So if we create the demand, we can create the additional supply of more routes, more provincial funding, more interest in adults, more interest in people going forward as they mature into adulthood and agreeing to take buses instead of relying on vehicle transit. But it requires an investment now. It requires an investment today in getting the paradigm shift to happen. It'll take years to change the culture. And piloting it for 6 months, talking about pilots, wouldn't even do the job. This is something that's going to take years to actually change the culture of our community, a suburban community that's based on cars. In fact, this community largely grew from cars. So, I mean, this is a very car-oriented community. And in order to change that dynamic, we have to invest time, and time is something that We do have some of it. I know it's going to cost money, but it's the only way we're going to get people on the buses. It's the only way you're going to be able to justify additional routes. Now, we also have this, we're making a big deal, and so we should, about our electrification of our fleet. We're spending a lot of money on it. We heard today that it's our largest capital infrastructure investment on the books today. If we want to take advantage of that electric investment, that investment in electrification, then we need to start building the customers so that they will be around to drive those or to ride on those electric buses. And the best way to do that is to create the culture shift, to get kids to get used to the idea of public transit. My generation is not going to do it. Most of us around this table aren't going to do it. You know, Councillor Grant's a champion for being a bus user, but we're probably not going to do it. But where we do have a chance at winning this argument is with the younger people today that are making choices as they grow up as to how they want to get from here to there. And if public transit is in their quiver of tools to actually make those trips, then chances are they're going to continue that into adulthood. So I'm solely in favor of endorsing this project. I really think that we're not rushing to anything here. If we were rushing, then you know this has been more than 2 decades in the making. That's not a rush. That's at best a slow walk. So let's take the next step. Let's take a leap of faith, and let's actually embrace the idea of getting our kids on the buses as a paradigm shift and rewarding our seniors for their dedication, for their contribution to our society, for their the last years of their lives. Let's make them the best years of their lives and make them mobile and able to get where they want to go, church, shopping, or just out for a ride for the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Councillor Elgar and Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, through Mayor Burton. Well, I'm just going to say that right now, we were going to spend $33,177,400, and basically we are throwing another $1.1 million onto the tax levy for next year. I realize this year it's $545 because what we have done is we're taking half of the 1.1 from reserves. That represents 14% of our total tax levy that taxpayers pay, and I want to make sure that we do it right. I really do want to increase the traffic. However, our staff did not support what we want to do. And I'm thinking, okay, they say they can do better. I want to give them the time. If it takes a few months, I can live with that. And I think my residents will too. I do know that a lot of the residents that live in Oakville right now have had a tough 2 years. And I've been told different things. Get throwaway transit, get on the Uber. Like, pay for the Uber, it'd be a lot cheaper. Like, honestly, I know it doesn't work, but the thing is, we've got to realize not everybody uses the bus, and they keep seeing empty buses. And if our experts that we have at the town, and I do believe we've got some fantastic transportation experts on staff right now that have been brought in, they are looking for new ways, and I want to give them a chance to do something. So I'm really hoping that we can all do a kumbaya at the end of this, and I'd like a recorded vote on this also, please, Mayor.
Thank you for your kumbaya gesture. Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Worship. I echo and thanks to all the debates and discussion with respect to it's very universal and eye wide opening with respect to some of the background in everybody's boards. But where I'm coming from is, I guess, as an investment, is that we're at 33 million and we've given $18 million for new expansion, the capital side of it. And now we're going to put in a little over $1 million without any information or data. If I was an investor and saying, yeah, I'm going to give you $1 million, but I want to read the sheets, but we don't have any of that. So I find it very, very disheartening that we're going to put in $1 million without having that information provided to us. As council, in the years of council, I've been involved, reports come forward and we make decisions based on fact and data. And then we make those decisions. We're making a decision here without that information. It just, if I was in the investment side of it, I'd walk from this deal. But I appreciate what everyone's saying with respect to the concerns of people trying to get up, working on the bus. There must be other strategies and other other ways of doing it. And I'm hoping through our experts at the town that they can come up with some options available for us to then debate and to come up with something that might be doable for everyone. The reality of it is to throw money at this, with all due respect, and not having any information or data on options or even what the outcomes or the metrics will be. Is there any guarantee we're going to get more people on the buses, whether youth or older adults? The reality of it is we don't know that. So I have a real problem putting money at something that we don't have any clarity. And I just leave it as that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Longo is next, and then Councillor Shi for a second time. Can I just point out that if we spend 40 minutes on every one of these separations, you're not going to go home tonight.
We're going to slow down anyway.
I mean, I'm hearing arguments get repeated. I'm not sure that's a way to persuade people, but, you know, that's just my free advice. Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think I'm the last to speak for the first time, so I'll try and make this interesting and short at the same time. I've taken public transit for a very long time in my life. Train, bus, I think it's extremely important for our community to thrive in. We also have crazy numbers of growth targets that are coming, and we need more people to use the bus. So I'm actually in support of this motion. I think we need to increase ridership. I think we have to make money not being a barrier for people to use it. I think post-COVID, we need to have more people on the buses. And I think climate change is all part of, you know, if we actually believe in getting out of our vehicles, our cars, and getting onto public transit, I think we have to start somewhere. And I think Mayor Burton made the comment, we have the right to revision, correction, and improvement. If it's not working, I think we can look back and we can revise it at that time, but I think we have to try. So I'm in support of it.
All right, all my advice to the contrary. We're more second timers. Councillor Shi and then Councillor McNeese.
Thank you, Worship. We are talking about the increased transit frequency. This is this absolutely right. But this is have a significant cost increase. For example, if our frequency is 30 minutes, if we want to shorter in half, that will be, we have double our fleet, double our drivers. So that will be significant cost in the future. And also there is a population support that should be considered very important factor to how to increasing the transit frequency. For Oakville's population over 220,000, I'm not an expert, yes. So is this population can strong support this increasing the transit frequencies like Mississauga? We are not like Mississauga, we are not like in Toronto. So they have enough population. If government invests the money to increase the frequency, that will be see the result. But for us, I cannot see that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shi. Councillor McNeese.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through hearing both sides of this, and in reading up on this and looking at the Safe Streets information that was sent to us about Burlington, they took the time to run a pilot and determined that seniors were free, but outside of rush hour, so they don't have to acquire new buses and infrastructure during those peak times, and youth is free in evenings and weekends, so they're not conflicting with school bus service, or we're not taking on school bus service when we're recovering nothing for it. So I would like to offer an amendment that could potentially please everyone, that if we move forward with seniors free transit, that it be outside of rush hour, and if we move forward with youth free transit, that it be in evenings and weekends.
Okay, that's great.
Is there a second for Councillor McNeese's motion amendment? Councillor Dudek, thank you. Shall we vote on the amendment, or would you like an hour of debate on this? Councillor Haslett-Thiel, you're speaking to the amendment? The only speaking that's in order at this point is to the amendment.
Then I'll speak to the amendment. So I appreciate Councillor McNeese's putting forward an alternative. And what I would say is, once again, we're trying to be transit planners, and we are not transit planners. However, there are benefits to providing, moving forward. I heard that loud and clear. And there are benefits to understanding usage, because what continues to baffle me is the assumption is that we know why people are not getting on the bus, and that free is why they are not getting on the bus. And if we know that, I would like somebody to show me where that data is. And thank you, Councillor Adams, for refreshing my memory that Freedom Pass actually does exist, and it's in the evenings and weekends, I believe. And there's multiple ways that we could play with the Freedom Pass or other alternatives which transit expertise could provide to us. However, if we need to take a step forward, I would support Councillor McNeese's suggestion, because at least it gets us somewhere where we are starting to, we can get some data, and hopefully staff through this discussion recognize the kind of data that we need to make change. So Councillor McNeese, thank you for looking for a bridge on this one, and I will support you.
Councillor Elgar, you're next on the amendment.
On the amendment, my only question would be, what is the dollar value that we're putting in the budget levy and in tax stabilization to do what he's proposing?
Commissioner and Director, but I think I'm safe to say to Finance, isn't it true that it would make next to no difference to the amount?
Through you, Mayor Burton, I believe the Director of Transit would have the information for Council.
Oh, good. Mr. Cowan, Council looks forward to the light you can shed on this.
Thank you, Mayor Burton.
Or maybe the Commissioner is going to. Let me ask staff, would you appreciate 5 minutes to think over your answer? That's a yes? All right, well then, I'm going to call a recess. It's almost 12 to the hour. We've been sitting long enough to where some people might welcome a bio break. So council is recessed until 8 p.m. A question. And Commissioner Fu, we're all ears.
Can you hear me? Oh, there you go. Great. So for the senior, 24 hours, 7 days free was originally in the budget for $540,000 for 8 months. The number to compare to the amendment for senior for 8 months is $330,000. So that's a comparison between, again, 540 to 330. For the youth, what's in the budget in front of you is $550,000 for the 8 months. The amendment is $175,000 for the 8 months. So the comparison there is 550 versus 175. Just want to give you the full year impact as well, because from the 8 month, we could project what the full year impact will be. For the senior, the full year impact for the amendment is $495,000. For the youth, for the full year impact is $260,000. And Director of Finance here have the tax impact if you require.
Through you, Mayor Burton. So if you were to consider the amendment in the same manner that the original motion was considered, that is approximately 50% of each of those items funded by tax stabilization, the impact on the overall tax bill would be 3.74%. And if you were to fund the entire amount on the tax levy, the entire amount would be 3.79%. So no tax stabilization funding.
So an almost imperceptible difference? If you said 0.74 versus 0.79?
That's correct.
Thank you. Councillor Dudek has a question.
Thank you. I heard you say the full year for the amendment. What's the full year for what's currently being proposed by the Budget Committee?
Yes. So for the senior, full year impact currently proposed by the budget is $810,000 compared to the full year of the amendment is $495,000. For the youth, the full year impact per the budget is $825,000 versus the amendment is $260,000.
That's quite considerable. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, the tax impact of the two you just mentioned, just to have the, so we have the full matrix of all the comparators here.
So you're looking for the town portion? Is that Mayor
No,
Burton?
the overall. So you gave 3.74 and 3.79, and we know that it's, as proposed by the Budget Committee, it's 3.8, right?
That is correct. Sorry, through you, Mayor Burton. So coming in originally was 3.8, so this would be reducing those amounts. That's why it's going down from 3.8 to 3.79 and 3.74.
So for comparison, we're arguing over whether it's a 3.8 or 3.79 or a 3.74?
Correct.
And together, the amendment, you've given us a tax impact of each of the components instead of both of them together. Or did 3.79 mean both of them?
Oh, so sorry, through you, Mayor Burton. So that is both of them together, treated the same way.
3.79?
Yeah.
Okay, so council, the difference between the amendment and the proposal is 0.01. All right, Councillor Knoll.
Thank you. Quick question before some comments. The question is, do those impacts include any value attributed to provincial grants for increased ridership? Has that been taken into account? No. Okay, so it's not really, that's not the full amount because there's still that grant subsidy that would come down the road. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Burton, we wouldn't be able to say what the impact would be. Ridership is one of the variables. The amount of gasoline sold is also a variable. So, and if it's federal, it's only for capital. Provincial can be used for both. So we wouldn't be able to give you an answer on what the potential impact might be at this time.
But there would be a positive impact on the overall, on the revenue granted from the federal and provincial governments, correct? Of some nature.
It would depend on our ridership increase in comparison to other transit properties.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, so my comments. So that may sound like a lot of cash difference between the two, but here's the reality. When you take half measures, you often fail because you do not, you complicate systems so much so that it doesn't become intuitive. It doesn't become the system, because the concept is to build ridership. If you create a system where you have to basically say, is this going to be prime time, or is this, the idea is to be able to provide a system where the kids and the seniors can basically hop on the bus when they want to, when they need to, and when it's most convenient to them, not using a slide rule to figure out what time, rush hour is and what it's not. I do appreciate very much the sentiment from Councillor McNeice attempting to find a way to yes. So thank you for that very much. But I just want to be clear, though, that, if this is not, and I said this in my original, my opening comments 4 or 5 hours ago when we started this debate, my comment at that time was that, I'm looking at this not as a financial consideration. While it is, I'm looking at this in the larger context, and that is a contribution or a movement towards that culture shift, towards greening our environment, towards getting people off of single passenger vehicles, getting them off the roads, and increasing quality of life for the participants. So with those comments, I will not be supporting the amendment on the floor. I'll be not supporting the original I don't know. I'm in favor of free transit. I don't know how to make it work, but we'll figure that out at the end of the day.
Thank you, Councillor Adams.
Thanks very much. Could I ask that the amendment that's being floated be given to us in writing, please? Was it emailed to us?
Councillor, I thought it was easy enough to remember.
Yeah, through your worship.
Councillor McNeice, to assist your colleague, would you repeat your motion, please?
Yes, that, sorry, senior transit be free outside of rush hour during the day, and that youth transit be free in evenings and weekends. I'm just concerned that we don't want to replace school buses and take on that burden when we're not built to do that. And this is what Burlington did as well.
Thank you. That's not terribly well defined. What do you mean by rush hour? What do you mean by evenings? Those are, I think, valid questions. And to Councillor Knoll's point, when you have to start parsing, at what point do I get to get on the bus for free? Oh my gosh, if I'm a teenager and I'm trying to get to my part-time job, does that mean that it's free or not free? I'm confused. So for all these different kinds of reasons, I think it's time to just move ahead, and I'm happy to continuing to support the original motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McNeice, thank you very much for your help with that. Council, may I put the vote on this amendment? All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Any opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The amendment fails, but Councillor McNeice, thank you very much for bringing it forward. I appreciate the spirit in which you brought it. Council, may I put the vote on the motion before us? All righty. Council, in order to vote for the free transit initiative for youth and seniors, you will say yes, and in order to vote against it, you will say no. The clerk will call the roll, and at that time, you'll answer. Thank you.
Sorry, couldn't find my mic. Mayor Burton.
Yes.
Councillor Adams.
Yes.
Councillor Chisholm.
No.
Councillor Dudek.
No.
Councillor Elgar.
No.
Councillor Giddings.
No.
Councillor Grant.
Yes.
Councillor Haslett-Thiel.
No.
Councillor Knoll.
Yes.
Councillor Lischina.
Yes.
Councillor Longo.
Yes.
Councillor O'Meara.
No.
Councillor Nanda.
Yes.
Councillor McNeice.
No.
Councillor Shi.
Yes.
Council, the motion carries 8-7. Thank you, everybody, for your time and all the thoughtful considerations and questions that were put. The next separation is, and just to be clear, that was both of the transit items in one motion. The next separation is the item K, the intergovernmental position in the mayor's office. Council, I'm in your hands, but how many of us want to speak to this?
Mayor Burton, since I asked for it to be separate, I'd just like to say that it's maybe a good idea, but I just feel at this point in time, the mayor and councillor's office has a full-time staff of 5. And what I'm hopeful of is that we can then reassign some of the duties of the 5 people we have currently in there that will be able to do this function if it's so important. The job description of one of the people, it mentions the being involved in that. It identifies opportunities for town to participate in and influence the development of public policy at a regional, provincial, and federal levels of government in areas central to the town's priorities. So I'm hoping that we can still do what needs to be done, but not have to hire staff. I know with the chair, Gary Carr, at the region, he has only one employee directly reporting to him. So I'm thinking if there is an issue, maybe we should take it up with the region, because then it could look after all of the 4 municipalities. But I'm hoping that we can see our way not to add a person at this point in time, because there's a lot of people out there suffering right now, and seeing that 73,000 is for the remainder of this year, so we're definitely way over 100,000 for a full-time position next year when it comes to budget. So that's why I'd like to separate that and ask for a recorded vote on that one also, please.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Are there other speakers? Councillor Haslett-Thiel.
My comments on this are, it is clear we do need intergovernmental support. And I would have, you know, after thinking through this further, it strikes me that we have a strategy policy department which could provide us with that level of support. And in fact, they wrote advocacy documents for us last year that were to help us from a positioning perspective. And I also understand that in Burlington, doing a little bit of homework, their office is of 3 people. So while I totally support we need an advocacy strategy aligned with council's direction, I do believe that within the budget headcount, we could achieve what we need to achieve without the additional headcount.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there other speakers? May I put the vote? Councillor Elgar has called for a roll call vote. The clerk will call the roll. To vote for the motion to adopt the position, you will vote yes. To deny the request, you will vote no. Madam Clerk?
Mayor Burton?
Yes.
Councillor,
Yes.
Councillor Adams?
Yes.
Councillor Chisholm?
Yes.
Councillor Dudek?
No.
Councillor Elgar?
No.
Councillor Giddings?
No.
Councillor Grant?
No.
Councillor Haslett-Thiel?
No.
Councillor Knoll?
Yes.
Councillor Lischina?
No.
Councillor Longo?
Yes.
Councillor O'Meara?
No.
Sorry, I did not hear that.
No.
No. Councillor Nanda?
Yes.
Councillor McNeese?
No.
Councillor Shi?
Yes.
Eight noes.
Council, that motion fails 8-7. Can we move on? Councillor Elgar also separated the lighting for the Holton Heights pathway, if I have that correctly.
The correct, Mayor Burton. I'm just afraid at this point we're setting a new precedent with putting it in this area. I'm not against the snow plowing. I'm all for that, but I really feel that we have miles or kilometers and kilometers of trails throughout Oakville, and if we start lighting that one, I'm afraid there's going to be an awful lot of requests, and you're going to be inundated with an awful lot of lighting you really cannot support. So I will not. I'm asking for that we don't support this.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Councillor Giddings?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question in terms of whether this would be better off coming to the Parks Rec Library Master Plan discussion, where we're going to have public input and discuss a wide range of options. I just think because it will affect the entirety of all of our wards, I just thought it might be better discussed at length with staff recommendations coming to the Parks Rec Library Master Plan.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. Councillor Adams.
Thanks very much. I just wanted to give a little bit of context about this particular location. It's not one where it's in a trail system. It is part of an active park. The trail in question is actually paved. It's got soccer fields on either side of it, park playground and tennis court on the other side. It's got a parking lot through part of it. So it's an active park space. It's not a passive trail system. So from that perspective, I think it's a little bit different from what's been talked about by some. I support the idea that there be discussion about what lighting is appropriate for trails, but I don't think that that needs to stop this particular location. During the budget committee discussions, we talked with Chris Mark about this location, and he recognizes that this is a little bit different from some of those other locations that we've talked about. So from that perspective, I'd like your support to continue with this location. We did talk about bringing forward a request for report, or through the master planning process, to ask our staff to provide some kind of policy or procedure around future locations that would be appropriate for lighting. And I certainly don't think that we need to have lighting in every location, but I do think that this is an appropriate spot for it.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Are there other speakers? May I put the vote? Councillor Dudek.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Adams. Just to obtain a bit more clarification, so is this a linkage path from one area to another that you're referring to as opposed to a recreational trail?
Yeah, I wouldn't describe this as a recreational trail. It links two sides of a neighborhood together. Part of it is also, this neighborhood, it's on the other side of the creek from here, and it is a location where we do from time to time have students who would be coming through those areas in the evenings, potentially. We did, in fact, a number of years ago, light the trail system between Sheridan College to that neighborhood, in part for safety and security reasons. So there's a number of other things going on in this particular area that make me view this as a slightly different park space than a trail going through a forest or something like that. It's not that. Yeah.
Councillor Elgar, are you calling for a roll call vote on this too? Are there any opposed to this motion? Just you? Then the motion carries. Thank you, Councillor Elgar, and congratulations to everybody who was in support of it. The next separation is I wrote this down. It's Councillor Knoll separated the community increase, but you want to be more specific? I didn't write down a good enough note here.
Well, you reminded me that it wasn't in the original motion, so it has to be a separate amendment to the motion.
Right. Okay, so this list got shorter. That list just grew. So Councillor Chisholm separated the waste dumping in our parks education program. And Councillor Chisholm, you're up.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have some reservations with this. When we in the past have done these kind of mini educations with respect to parks and so forth, they don't seem to be very successful. Unfortunately, spending $18,000, I don't think it's going to solve or even alleviate the problem in our parks. I think that the bigger issue is about waste disposal and frequency of waste pickup in residential areas. I'm not convinced $18,000 is going to give us any residual impact or positive results from this. So that's just my comments on it. I think the $18,000 could be spent somewhere else in another program.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Chisholm. On every green pail we have in every park location, it has the sticker on it talking about household waste only. It doesn't make much of a difference. So I can't support this. Thanks for Councillor Chisholm for bringing this one forward.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. I think it says no household waste, right? Not household waste only, but anyway, I'm sure that's what you meant. Councillor O'Meara.
Yeah, I'll just be brief and support this as I did at Budget Committee. This is a feel-good appeasement thing, unfortunately, and it's not going to work, and I'd just rather we spend this $18,000 giving garbage bags out to people to clean up parks or do something more constructive with it. So I'll support Councillor Chisholm's move on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. If there are no other speakers, may I put the vote? Are there any opposed to the motion for the education program? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I see 7 opposed. If you're in favor, please raise your hand. That carries 8-7. Thank you, everybody. The next separation item, that's the end of the separation items. We're closer to passing the budget. Councillor Knoll, an amendment to the budget would be in order now. Council amendments are in order now. Councillor Knoll is recognized because he's got one.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move that $45,000 be added to increase the annual councillor community outreach and professional development as discussed at the Budget Committee meeting. Do you need a seconder before I can speak, or can I speak to it now?
You need a seconder.
Okay.
Councillor Adams is your seconder.
Thank you.
Someone should speak.
Okay, well, I will take a kick at this. First of all, please don't hold the transit vote against me. Just kidding. There's an easy way to save money. Don't spend it. In my ward, in our ward, we have a particularly large ward, as many of you know, and we are very involved in a lot of community activities, a lot of community activations, communications tools, etc. Very large ward, lots and lots of people. It's expensive. Costs have gone up. Printing's gone up. Everything's gone up since the pandemic, and it is decreasing our ability to be able to do the community activation work that we're used to doing in our ward. It's reducing the amount of times we can communicate with our constituents. It reduces the number of events we can participate in, and we do a lot. You know, we're very active councillors in Ward 5, and I'm sorry I shouldn't be speaking on behalf of my colleague, although I think he was going to second it. But we're very active councillors in Ward 5, as many of you are, most of you are, all of you are, but we have a lot of expensive events for a very large ward. So it's time to realize that we have had the same budget for a number of years. Costs have gone up, and we have not been able to keep on top of that. So we're reducing services that the public love, and we don't want to have to do that again this year. So we'd really appreciate the support on this. And like I said, if you're, instead of voting against it, if you don't want it, just don't spend it. Leave it in the budget, and it stays in circulation. But for those of us that need this extra money for our larger and growing constituency, we'd really like the money.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Nanda.
I was just going to say I'm in agreement with Councillor Knoll as well. We are a rapidly growing community, and in the short time that Councillor Chi and I have been in office, we feel that we've done some community events, and we feel it's going to grow. And just like we keep saying, with inflation and being able to reach out to our communities, we have new communities that are coming out. We'd like to be able to reach out to them as well. So that's going to require, I think, a higher cost as well. So I'm just going to say that I'm in support of Councillor Knoll's motion.
Thank you, Councillor Nanda. Councillor Dudek.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I can appreciate Councillor Knoll's sentiment, and thank you for recognizing that we all have growing constituencies and we regularly communicate with our constituents. I think we as council have to set an example for people who are struggling with food, taxes, all the other things that this inflation has caused for the average person to get by. $3,000 more is not the end of the earth in terms of we need that desperately, that additional $3,000. I myself think we need to tighten our belts and demonstrate that we're willing to toe the line, and I cannot support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dudek. Councillor Elgar and Councillor Haslett-Thiel.
Thank you. Through Mayor Burton. Councillor Knoll, I realize what you're trying to do, and the problem is if Peter and I want to send out a newsletter in our ward, it costs us $10,000. And the feedback we're getting is by the time they get the newsletter, unfortunately, the information is out of date. We need the town staff to come up with a better way to teach us how to communicate better online, so it doesn't cost the ridiculous amount of money that it's costing now for the printing costs. It's brutal. So I would like to say, yeah, sure, I need the money, but I think I'll have to get a little smarter on how we operate. And I haven't got the solution, but with the way people are complaining lately about the costs of everything, I'm going to try to suck it up and try to live within the budget we have. So I can't be supporting it, but I appreciate the gesture, and I think we need new ways to communicate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. The screen has lit up with speakers. Councillor Haslett-Thiel, you're next.
Mayor Burton, one of the things that I asked at committee was whether or not we could do some level of rollover. So to Councillor Knoll's suggestion, if you don't spend it, my thought had been, well, if I don't spend it in 1 year, but I want to have a bigger event the next year, I think we should have the latitude to say it is a budget over 4 years and we can allocate it accordingly versus the rules right now, which I thought we had the ability to change at some point, limit us and say we're hard stop at the 9. So I think if we had the rollover, we could, with some teamwork, do a better job of using the funds that we have and allocating them. And so for that reason, I'm more in support of a rollover versus an increase. Though I readily understand the increase in print costs, but I do think that we can do it. And I actually think, I admire the amount of events that do occur, but my question is, our staff are experts in running events. And I think that they should be supporting it through the corporate budgets that we have allocated versus us having to take it out of the community benefit allowance. Ours is a minor amount of money to do small things. To do these big things should be in the overall budget. So for that reason, I'm not going to support an addition.
Thank you, Councillor Haslett-Thiel. Councillor Shi.
Thank you, Worship. I would like to support Councillor Knoll. So I believe this increasing the community, this allowance can help build a stronger and more connected community in our world. By supporting local initiatives, empower community groups, we can help create a more vibrant and inclusive community for all residents. So I support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shi. Councillor Giddings, and then Councillor Grant and Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with a number of my colleagues that we should also show restraint. Communication is a priority for Councillor Haslett-Thiel and I. The past several years, we've taken money out of our own pocket to make sure that we are able to communicate with them as often as we can. I do concur that if we were able to roll it over similar to the regional budget, that would make sense, and it may assist those of us that would like to do larger printed copies of to reach our ward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. Councillor Grant and Councillor Grant.
Thank you. I'm going to support Councillor Knoll. I realize everybody's talking about communications and costs of printing and things like that. We do communicate with our residents. We do not have a physical paper that we put out. In fact, I'll give a shout out to Knowles News, which is called that because apparently Grant's Grumblings was not allowed. We do communicate electronically with a number of people, but we do find ourselves holding a number of things and events within our community, and that's kind of where we hit the wall. We've supported several outdoor ice rinks over the season. We'd like to go back to doing a lot of our summer events again, and we're finding the cost of these events to bring the community out, especially after COVID, to get active, to meet one another and have a great community conversation and a free barbecue is getting much more expensive. So I realize that the focus that a lot of the councillors around the table have is, well, you know, my newsletter doesn't cost that much. We're not really dealing with the newsletter on that in our ward. We're dealing more with events that bring people out of their homes into spaces where we can all just get together, have a good time, and be friendly. And again, costs for these things, as we all know, are going up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor Knoll again.
Thank you. I think that we were actually going to call it Grant's Grousings, but anyway, we stuck with Knoll's News. I just want to emphasize something that Mark just said, and I probably could have just taken my hand down, but it's when we talk about the costs going up, it's not just print communication. In fact, I already largely, personally, abandoned print communication in favor of digital and have a considerable digital circulation. It's the events and sponsoring activities in the ward. Mark mentioned ice rinks. You know, we try to help the community when they want to build those community ice rinks at a much lower cost than our staff can do it, for example, and it's a nice gesture for those in those parents or folks in the community that want to do something nice for the kids and the adults in the neighborhood by putting the ice rinks together, sponsoring all sorts of different activities in the ward. A major annual festival every year, which is one of Oakville's largest festivals. And speaking of taking money out of your pocket, I do as well take a lot of money out of my personal and corporate pocket as well to help subsidize some of these things. And the costs just keep going up. And frankly, some of those costs that are going up, are costs related to the town. A lot of those are internal recoveries, so permits and things like that have to be obtained in order to have events in the ward. So I think at a time when people are nervous and dealing with mental health issues and worried about finances, having great community events, great community activations, great community activities, I think that this actually speaks to that. It's a small investment for a very large return. When you don't have money, going to a neighborhood skating pond or skating rink that might not otherwise exist is the tonic. Being able to go to a free community festival or free movies in the park or any other things that we do in Ward 5, those are excellent ways to say, we hear you. We know that everything costs money and your costs are going up and you're stressed. We want to do something to help de-stress you. Our parks and recreation staff do a fantastic job, and I know all of you do fantastic jobs in your ward at your various events. I always look forward to the North Oakville Fair as well, in like Ward 6. There's a shout out for you and your team, Tom and Natalia. And we just want to be able to continue to do it. And I think if ever there was a time to do it and to not have to shrink it, but to increase it, is today. When we're dealing with the post-pandemic period, people are looking for activations for themselves and their family in the community. So it's not a lot of money, not a lot rises or falls on this, but I do think the investment in our constituencies is well worth it. And just to emphasize for anybody who's watching this isn't a stipend that goes in any councillor's pockets. None of this benefits us personally in any way whatsoever. This is strictly money that we're allowed to spend on behalf of our constituency from the town coffers. And I will point out as a last little bit, we're already probably the cheapest community that I know of in terms of councillor budgets. We don't have staff, we don't have office space, we don't have the large budgets that a lot of municipalities have. So we're already quite frugal as it is. Let's just reduce the frugality just a tiny bit so we can do a little bit more as costs are getting higher. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be brief. We're taking money from people's paychecks. That's what we're doing here. And every single dollar, no matter how small or how big, we have to remember that. And we're asking people to, after they're done paying for everything that need to live, to pay a little more. And I think, as Councillor Duddick said, we can try and do a little more as well. So I'd also ask for a recorded vote, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. Council, may I put your recorded vote now, or do we have more speakers? Councillor Hazard-Thiel for another time?
Right. It's I just want to say I absolutely admire some of the suggestions that have come out. But what I do want to emphasize is we also support ice rinks. In fact, I have a councillor that's run an ice rink for 10 years and done and gathered volunteers. And we support Ward Residents Association. So all of us do our part. So please don't take a no vote that I don't appreciate what you, in fact, do. It is, however, I do believe there are ways that we, if we got together, could leverage and our staff could do more of that work at less cost, and you could still have fabulous events. So I'll be voting no.
Thank you, Councillor Hazlet-Thiel. Council, may I put the vote? I don't see any objection. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll? To vote for the increase, you'll say yes. To vote against it, you'll say no.
Mayor Burton,
Yes.
Councillor Adams,
Yes?
Councillor Chisholm,
No.
Councillor Dudek,
No.
Councillor Elgar,
No.
Councillor Giddings,
No.
Councillor Grant,
Yes.
Councillor Hazlet-Thiel,
No.
I'm sorry, no? Sorry.
No.
No. Councillor Knoll,
Yes.
Councillor Lischina,
Yes.
Councillor Longo,
No.
Councillor O'Meara,
No.
Councillor Nanda,
Yes.
Councillor McNeese,
No.
and Councillor Shi.
Yes.
Council, the amendment fails 8-7. All right, Council, if it's your pleasure, I will put the vote on the budget as amended, or not amended. Well, it has been amended by some takeaways and some stays, so the budget has changed. Is there an objection, and does anybody require a roll call vote on this? Is there any objection to adopting the budget as we've adjusted it? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. It carries unanimously now. I'm glad we found agreement. Thank you, everybody. Now, Council, I would like to ask you to give me a motion. I need a mover and a seconder to resolve in the committee of the whole. Councilor Hazlet-Thiel and Councilor Longo, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that carries. Thank you both. And now I would like to move up from the agenda the Oakville Enterprises Corporation quarterly update and presentation by Rob Lister, the CEO of Oakville Enterprises, and his patient colleagues who've been sitting here learning a lot about how budgets are made at this level. Mr. Lister, we look forward to your good news.
Can you just confirm to me that the yes position failed? So when we voted on your K, you said yes. And it was 7.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Burton, members of council. It's a real pleasure for us to be here again this evening to provide an update. This evening I have with me Jeff Mocha, who's our Chief Engineering and Innovation Officer at OEC. We have Scott Moody, EVP and Chief Energy Transformation Officer. Scott McCoggan, EVP and Chief Operating and Strategy Officer. And Annie Petrin, our Manager of Content and Brand. Our chair board, David Brennan, wanted to be here this evening but was unable to attend, so he sends his regards to council. So this evening, Jeff Mocha will be providing the update, and so I am going to ask Jeff to come up and take you through an update on Oakville Hydro, some industry news, and some community highlights. So Jeff, please come up.
Okay. Thank you, Rob, and good evening, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Thanks. It's my pleasure to be here tonight and give you an update on recent industry, business, and community highlights. Page down seems to do it. Before I provide an update on our business, I'd like to begin by giving an update on recent industry news that's recently moving the dial as it relates to sustainable initiatives and electrification in Ontario. First, the IESO released a Pathways to Decarbonization a report outlining scenarios that explore how Ontario can reach a zero-emissions electricity grid reliably and cost-effectively. Insights include the electrification sector is expecting to reach an annual growth rate of 2.7% from 2023 to 2050, effectively doubling the energy demand. The labor force will be required to grow by 600% to deliver the required electricity infrastructure projects. An area roughly equivalent to 14 times the size of Toronto is needed for all incremental infrastructure. And the estimated cost to double the size of the current electricity system is between $375 and $425 billion. Also announced in December, site preparation is now underway for Canada's first grid-scale small modular reactor, or SMR, at Ontario Power Generation's Darlington nuclear site. This work marks another milestone in the province's plan to build the reliable, affordable, clean electricity grid needed to enable electrification and attract more investment in the province's economy. Battery storage is a key technology enabling Ontario's pathway to decarbonization. And earlier this month, the governments of Canada and Ontario announced that they are working together to build the largest battery storage project in the country. The 250 megawatt Oneida Energy Storage Project is being developed in partnership with the 6 nations of the Grand River Development Corporation, Northland Power, Enerstor, and Aecon Group. Key benefits of the project include a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 4.1 million tons, equivalent to taking 40,000 cars off the road, and improved electricity management during times of peak demand. In December 2022, the Ontario Energy Board confirmed that it had made the necessary amendments to the regulatory codes to enable implementation of the new ultra-low overnight time-of-use electricity price plan. This plan is expected to offer an overnight rate of 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour, which is 70% lower than the current off-peak rate, in exchange for a higher on-peak rate. This would help consumers who use more electricity at night, such as EV users, find savings of up to 5% on their bills, a savings of up to $90 per year. The Ontario Energy Board is currently developing updated communication materials and graphics for this new price plan, and we hope to be able to share that with you in our next council update. As Oakville continues to advance its own electrification strategy, Oakville Hydro has been leading several efforts, including a study and simulation for EV forecasting, as well as supporting the Grid Smart Cities electrification strategy. The electricity grid in Oakville is highly dynamic and has the operational capability to adjust electrical power flows in real time based on local energy needs. Oakville Hydro continues to analyze electricity grid operations in addition to load growth simulations, using offline models that inform our system planning approach, including support for EV adoption and further electrification in the community. Oakville Hydro's ongoing work supporting the Grid Smart Cities electrification strategy will help establish a consistent approach for electrification in Ontario, including best practices, key focus areas, and deeper insights into timing for additional EV adoption. We are kicking off a new paperless billing campaign, whereby when a customer switches to paperless billing, Oakville Hydro will donate $10 to the Oakville Hospital Foundation. The Small Change, Big Impact paperless billing campaign will help purchase the latest diagnostic equipment, including a new CT scanner, which is crucial for the care and treatment of patients. I'd like to take a minute and speak to you about some of our engineering and digital solutions initiatives. Location intelligence is the use of geographic information and analysis to gain insights and make informed decisions. For a utility customer, location intelligence can help in understanding their customer base, optimizing service delivery, improving operational efficiency, and analyzing the impact of various factors such as weather, infrastructure, and market trends. For the first time, each municipality in the province can now access a one-stop shop for permitting through the use of one window. PlanView, which is an OEC company, designed and operated the tool using location intelligence data, which is streamlining municipal consent and right-of-way permitting into a single application. The tool is groundbreaking for its ability to connect every municipality into a single platform, creating a significant efficiency for Ontario. Our teams continue to seek opportunities to create efficiencies on how location services are delivered in a more efficient and effective manner. Most recently, we have started replacing utility drawings with photo locates. Previously, hand-drawn sketches were done in the field by the locator. The new process uses photos to deliver increased safety and efficiency while maintaining the highest quality standards and abiding by all regulatory requirements. OEC employs a robust cybersecurity program based on the industry-recognized National Institute for Standards and Technology, or NIST, cybersecurity framework. To execute the program, a dedicated cybersecurity team is in place. The cybersecurity program consists of 4 elements: cybersecurity awareness training for employees and partners, governance based on a risk assessment methodology, cybersecurity practices embedded in technology and processes, and risk-based reporting. We're continually evaluating and improving our cybersecurity practices to ensure that the critical security of data and assets is protected from external threats. Once again, employees all over Canada participated in Bell Let's Talk Day, a day that's meant to drive awareness about mental health and create positive change by putting a spotlight on Canadian mental health organizations who are working every day to provide these essential services. Employees participated by taking mental health breaks, engaging in mental health activities, and by joining together to support each other. This concludes OEC's updates. I thank you for your time this evening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Mocha, thank you very much for your presentation. Council, questions? Councillor Elgar and Hazlet Thiel and O'Meara.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Question regarding electric cars going forward and what the province is saying when everybody should have an electric car. If we, by 2035, do you have the infrastructure in place that we could have electric cars in every house and it would not cause a problem?
So that's a great question. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've been looking at our models. Our current level of adoption is about 5%. If we look ahead to 15%, that would have us changing some operating conditions and parameters, but we can handle that. When we get to 30% adoption, we need more investment. So that's where you start to get into that pathways of decarbonization study. There's more infrastructure needed.
So when you say more infrastructure, you're not talking bigger cables going to particular houses. Well, I guess you are that too, maybe, but that's a different issue with the 200 amp service, if you've only got 100 amp service today.
Correct. There would be service changes to the home. There could be transformer changes in communities, all the way up to the supply level where we may need more energy coming into Oakville itself.
So could there be a problem going forward where everybody in the subdivision has 100 amp service, and normally you think, oh, I'll throw it up to 200, so you just get the line from the street to the house. Could that line on the street also be too small if everybody has to do it?
Yeah, for sure. And through Mr. Mayor, they're all sort of linkages in the chain. So definitely as the end point gets bigger, you have to increase the size all the way up to where the supply comes from.
I was afraid you might say that. I thank you. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Councillor Elgar, thank you very much. Councillor Hazlet Thiel.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar, for that question, because it was one that was in the back of my mind as well, but you articulated it far better than I was going to. My question is just, we have been getting a fair amount of interest in OEC's work around climate change and retrofits and the Community Energy Corp. And I'm not sure when you report back on that or if it's going to be a consolidated report with staff, but could you just comment, or could we hear some comments on any progress that's being made in that regard?
Through you, Mayor Burton, if I may. We are working with town staff on an assessment of a feasibility report on moving forward with energy retrofits. So our work with the town, it would be through town staff that we would come back to council.
And is that something we're going to see in the next quarter, the next 2 quarters? Perhaps I'll stand up a little bit and say, CAO Closey, can you just clarify? Because I'm grateful for the partnership and the expertise. I know people are looking for some more information.
Through you, Mayor Burton, we have been working quite closely with OEC in terms of bringing forward first the workshop, and of course the pre-feasibility and a future feasibility study as well for the business plan. In other words, we're looking at bringing that workshop forward very early in April.
Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you, Councillor Hazard-Thiel. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you very much for that. And actually, just to spin off of Councillor Hazard-Thiel's comments, I'm just wondering, I know we're always looking for business ventures at OEC, and I'm wondering, and to go off of sort of a climate change and environmental lens, are we looking at those types of companies, whether they be like heat pump companies or companies that might, I guess, put a lens on a direction of type of company that we would like to get? I mean, are we focusing on those types of companies, or is it just a good deal is a good deal and we sort of go out that way?
I mean, I think we definitely, through Mr. Mayor, we have a portfolio of businesses that we look into, and that's absolutely a key factor in the decision making. Of course, we do have a great geo-exchange business. That's a key tenet of the current portfolio, but absolutely interested in others.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not so many years ago, we kept hearing about solar this and solar that, solar residential programs. Now, I know the province council, I think is it microfit or feed-in tariff program? And I guess that had a chilling effect on the industry. But where are we with that right now? Because it seems when we talk about the ability to be able to charge our EVs at home and the extra needs that we're going to have to nurture as we reduce reliance on fossil fuels, it seems that solar is a good alternative. Is there anything on the horizon that you're aware of, or that Oakville Hydro is looking at in terms of trying to boost that or shine some light on that particular sector again to get it moving?
Yes, thanks. Through Mayor Burton, we're certainly looking at the IESO and their leadership role in sort of the energy landscape in Ontario. And part of that decarbonization study, actually solar is a big component of that. So when we look at kind of the land requirement and the energy requirement, that's a big part of the plan. And that would span anything from rooftop solar, community-based, to larger grid-connected solar as well.
But what about the residential solar craze that seemed to have come and gone? Is there any hope for that in the future again?
I'm not aware of any incentives coming down the pipe for that, but it's certainly part of the portfolio.
Have costs dropped?
The technology cost has dropped over time, yes.
Okay. And last question is feeding on the conversation about EVs earlier, and speaking about how enterprising Oakville Enterprises is. Has there been any thought to providing DC fast chargers in town? I hear for full disclosure, I own a Tesla, and there's a shortage of DC fast chargers in town. But I hear about this from my fellow Tesla enthusiasts and constituents that there's not a lot of opportunity for fast charging in our community. Has there been any thought to Hydro getting involved in that business? When I was at AMO, there was 2 companies, one that's government owned and the other one I think is private, and they were looking for partnerships with LDCs to actually install and manage these sorts of facilities in the community.
I mean, from an OEC context, I think we're certainly interested in charging infrastructure, but there are restrictions for what Oakville Hydro can do related to the Ontario Energy Board. So at the moment, that there's not that option for the utility.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Further to one of Councillor Elder's questions, is there any movement among the various providers, stakeholders with the province in terms of the Ontario Building Code to talk about the upgrading of electrical services for new homes in anticipation of the continued growth of EVs?
I mean, it built into the building code, there are some requirements, provision for charger connectivity. I'm not aware of any code changes to require a charger in the home, but the provision is there.
Still to minimum standards, whether it be 100 amp service or whatever. They aren't looking at beefing that up at all?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. Mr. Moka, thank you very much, and thank you to your colleagues for being here tonight. I regret that I couldn't call you earlier, but I called you at the first opportunity, and I thank Councillor O'Meara for prompting me, because I was a little tunnel focused on the budget. So thank you very much. Council, I need a mover to receive the report. Councillor Elgar, thank you. Any objection? That carries. Thank you, everybody. Now we're gonna dart back to the budget. And I have a few remarks and a little bit of official business to convey. I'm going to call these remarks a prudent budget for uncertain times. We pride ourselves on a budget process that is public, engaging, and encouraging for our future. The 2023 budget has lived up to that goal. My compliments and thanks to the committee members and the committee chair, Councillor Janet Haslett-Thiel. Thanks also to Council for your thoughtful suggestions at committee meetings and tonight. Once again, we have a budget whose impact will keep the total property tax below inflation, well below. The committee's recommendation of 3.8% increase to the overall property tax bill will be 3.79% as a result of Council's work tonight. The local tax increase goes to 6.07% from the 6.15% the committee had recommended. All of us residents will appreciate this. Staff found efficiencies instead of cuts to help keep us well under our target of CPI or lower for the total tax increase. Thank you to every member of staff who did that very hard work. Statistics Canada reported that Canada's average inflation rate for 2022 was 6.8%, a 40-year high. It was in this context that our finance team and staff worked to meet or beat Council's direction of ensuring that the overall tax increase is below the Bank of Canada's 2023 inflation forecast. Thanks to staff and the Budget Committee and Council tonight, that goal was accomplished. The result is a prudent budget for these uncertain times. Against the odds, we have a total tax increase far below our neighbors and below our target. Let's remember some of the bigger odds against us. Inflation, high fuel costs, rising supply costs and long delays in supply chains, labor shortages that impact timelines and costs, add a growing population and legislative changes by Ontario and Canada, and you have quite a list of obstacles to get past to achieve our goal. Changes such as the More Homes Built Faster Act passed last year. We are still waiting for the regulations and additional information from Ontario on their promise to pay for the impacts of the More Homes Built Faster Act. We will keep careful track of those costs, and we will promptly inform the province of the costs of implementation of the More Homes Built Faster Act as we experience them with the clarity of the required but unpublished yet regulations. Together, we will meet the challenge of the housing supply crisis. Now, thanks to years of fiscal discipline from performance-based program budgeting, our growing dividend income, and the strongest municipal fiscal reserves in Canada, we are ready to face any immediate and long-term challenges. We will be able to invest in the necessary infrastructure. We will continue to provide the high quality of programs and services residents tell us they want and that make Oakville Canada's most livable community. This 2023 budget keeps our roads smoother than our neighbors. The budget funds our share of the construction of the Burl Oak Drive grade separation with safe pedestrian passage and bike lanes. Budget 2023 renews and rehabilitates parks, trails, and facilities all over town. Budget 2023 also creates new neighborhood parks, parkettes, and trails. This budget advances work on the Downtown Cultural Hub Plan for a new performing arts center, a main library, gallery, and parking structure. We will be making improvements to the streetscapes of our Kerr Street and Bronte Village business districts. The construction is already underway on the new tournament-quality cricket pitch and the park, public library, and community center at the 16 Mile Sports Complex. We're also upgrading our transit facility with infrastructure to support the electrification of our transit fleet. Last week, we unveiled our first batch of zero-emission battery electric specialized buses. These buses will be in service this spring, and we're on track to acquire more zero-emission battery electric buses to be used for conventional services early next year. Over the next 5 years, approximately 50% of Oakville Transit's fleet will be converted from diesel to electric. Our request to our federal and provincial partners for the other 50% to fund the full electrification of our transit fleet will be bolstered by increases and higher uptake in ridership. By making transit free for those who are 19 and younger, we will make transit a primary option for youth, and we can expect more frequent rides within the town by youth. By making transit free for seniors, we're helping those on fixed incomes during a time of rising food and other costs. We will encourage their further use of town facilities for seniors programming, as well as assist them to go to their appointments and visit friends and family across town. Every year, I hear council members ask staff for ways to increase or speed up our efforts against climate change, or at least to mitigate it. By making transit free for these deserving groups, we will make an immediate impact on climate change mitigation. A transit bus takes 40 vehicles off the road and saves 70,000 liters of fuel and reduces air pollutants by 9 tons a year every time we fill one. Funding for our active transportation master plan under this budget will improve traffic calming, will increase pedestrian safety and walking and biking. Budget 2023's increased community activation grants will provide assistance to local organizations for neighborhood and community activities and programming. To help local restaurants, Budget 2023 waives patio permit fees for 2023, and downtown businesses will have enhanced sidewalk clearing services along Lakeshore Road. Budget 2023 also funds the rehabilitation of the downtown parking garage. Feminine hygiene products will be available at all town public washrooms. We will continue to engage our residents and expand awareness of changes coming from the province. We want the public to be aware of our own plans and vision for our town, too. Our strategic work plan this spring, our work on our strategic plan this spring will offer all an opportunity to help shape our future. I'm proud of the way in which town staff, council, and the budget committee responded to the thoughtful delegations and requests from the public and from each other. This budget is proof that we are an organization that continuously improves and innovates while being fiscally prudent and responsible. Oakville's livability spurs economic growth and economic development. New employers and existing employers want to invest and expand in Oakville. Our economic recovery plan and economic development strategy have seen our office and industrial occupancy rates return to pre-pandemic levels. There are cities bigger than us who wish they could say that. We have been recognized as one of Canada's best locations to invest, and our 99.5% industrial occupancy rate in 2022 is a really good indicator of what investors think of our town. Our 2022 citizen survey found that 8 in 10 residents think they receive good value for their tax dollars, and they recommend their town to others. Our goal is to continue to provide the high-quality services, programs, and community infrastructure that make Oakville a thriving and attractive place to live, to work, to play, and to retire. Budget 2023 is the foundation for a strong term of council and for a thriving Oakville. I thank you, everyone who participated and made Budget 2023 the success it is and will be. Thank you, Council. Now, next, I need to ask you to turn to the four consent items, the 2 public ones and the 2 confidential ones, and I'll look for a motion to accept the consent items. Councillor Duddick?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Just some clarification. Councillor Chisholm and I were anticipating a revised motion from legal, and I haven't seen it as yet in regards to the one item.
Through you, Mayor Burton, there was a memo distributed to members. It was in eScribe. Regarding,
I can't get on eScribe right now.
Yeah.
It was on eScribe, Councillor Duddick.
That's fine then. That's great.
So for 9.2, the recommendation would be as revised by the memo from the legal department.
Thank you very much. That's very congenial of you. Is there any objection? And let's note that Councillor Knoll has not participated nor voted on this matter. Madam Clerk? You got everything you need on this one? And Councillor Duddick moved it successfully. No 7 to 8 vote. Now, the first discussion item on tonight's agenda is the Neighborhood Traffic Safety Program 2022 Annual Update. Staff are available for questions, and the indicated motion is receipt of the information. Councillor Adams.
Thank you very much. I wanted to ask our staff if they could have a quick discussion with me about the way in which surveys get responded to on, draw your attention to page 128 of 213 of our agenda, or page 9 of 16 of the report. And that's the section that talks about the process that we go through for determining if traffic calming is going to happen to a neighborhood or to a street. And one of the issues that Councillor Lischina and I have discovered is we put out surveys and we don't tell people what happened. And so we've discovered that often we get calls weeks, months after the town has put out a survey from constituents asking what happened. We thought something was going to happen. And the town's decided that nothing's going to happen because we didn't get enough responses or it didn't meet some threshold. And I wondered if we can make a change to that process to either tell people in the survey that the responses or the response to the survey is going to be found on the town's website at a future date, or in some way to communicate to residents what's happening to the survey. Because right now, a dead end gets hit and nobody knows that the dead end is hit and that nothing further is going to happen.
Great.
Through you, Mayor Burton, we will start putting it on the surveys that the results will be posted on the website, and we do post the results on the website because it's hard to, survey areas are larger, it's hard to communicate back to 200 or 300 residents. We'll start putting it on the surveys.
That, I think, would be a fantastic start to this to trying to deal with that particular problem. Because as we've discovered, when you put out 500 surveys to a neighborhood and you only get back maybe 100 or something, There's a bunch of people out there who don't know what's happened and why. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That sounded like a solid yes to me. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. You know, sometimes when you live and you breathe our policies that we've put in place, you find some little idiosyncrasies out there. And I just had a question about the traffic calming process. So, and specifically on page 125 towards the bottom, where we go through the process, where residents will submit a signed petition to initiate the process. Then when the petition is received, a traffic calming survey is conducted to ensure sufficient support exists. And then we go through that, and if it exists, then we go through and we do the speed surveys and we measure it, and then we decide which parts of the area decide that. I guess my question is, so we go through that process without actually knowing whether there's a speeding problem or not. And I think, I'm wondering if that's the best way. Because when we go and survey people and we say a petition has been brought forward asking for traffic calming, and then as soon as we start surveying people for traffic calming, regardless of whether we give them some information first, I'm wondering if maybe we, through your professional opinion, should we try and provide them with information with the petition first so that they can, I mean, they don't know when they respond. They say, I'm getting this, maybe there is speeding, I don't know. I'm wondering what your thought on that step being after we send out the survey to residents rather than maybe with the survey or something like that.
Through you, Mayor Burton, we updated this process last year in May, and we need a year worth of data to see if we need to revise the threshold or we need to revise any process. So this year we will continue with the current process, and we will definitely review the process by the year end, and then we will see if any changes to the threshold or any speed studies before the survey or after the surveys are required.
Okay, so we will track sort of, after, if we go back and we find, well, actually there isn't a speed problem, but we've already sent surveys out to people, so maybe we can rejig that. That's something we will keep in mind?
Yeah, we'll keep it in mind.
Excellent. And then just my last question, and I did speak to the director a little earlier about this, just with regards to the 40-kilometer-an-hour zone, the 3 zones. I have this feeling in my stomach that we're not doing what the discussion was in the last term of council for this with regards to the 3 elements of this: enforcement, education, and the changing of the signs. We've done the changing of the signs and we're waiting for data, but we have dropped the other 2, minimally, or from my conversation, we haven't had any enforcement in Lakeshore Woods with the Halton Regional Police yet. And those 2, and the data and in the studies that were a part of our discussion we last do, had just as much of an impact over the data than just putting signs up saying you're now in a 40 zone. So are we going to be undertaking those 2 elements before we get the final results back at the end of this year?
Through you, Mayor Burton. Education campaign, yes, we already have education campaign last year. We have been using transit shelter ads to promote the traffic safety and pedestrian safety. But as far as police enforcement is concerned, my viewpoint is if we are implementing a 40-kilometer per area pilot and continuously there's a police sitting there, it's going to skew the results. We will not get what the speed should be, I mean, without any enforcement. So that's my personal opinion, professional opinion. But as far as police, I can get help from jail or Commissioner Phoebe. I mean, how we can deploy police all the time over there.
Yeah.
Increased enforcement, like a lot of enforcement. I'm not sure about, I cannot speak about police resources, if they have resources or not. But as far as data is concerned, in my viewpoint, if there's a continuous enforcement, it will skew the data results.
You know, I understand like having continual police enforcement, I don't think is what the point is. I think what we're trying to get at is we work holistically as a team, which includes police, We do safety blitzes around school time. We do ride programs around the holidays. The same sort of initiatives from, I think Deputy Chief Hill had mentioned, we're there to do those same sorts of programs where the pilot is to let people know that it's 40 kilometers an hour and they should be doing it. So it's not necessarily, I'm trying to ticket people, but there is an enforcement education element to these pilot projects to help people who don't look at signs all the time. And I think that's the problem here is we're just putting up signs and expecting to change behavior. And the behavior needs to come, as per the conversations, with other elements and tentacles to it, and not just here's the 40 sign and let's expect people to change their behavior. So, I mean, I'd be happy to connect with the regional police again, and perhaps we can go back and look at the conversation this council had, because we discussed it pretty lengthy about the need for those three-pronged approach in order to get people to understand that Lakeshore Woods and Heritage Way and the West River area are in a 40-kilometer-hour project. So I just, my fears were drifting away from those three prongs a little bit. So I'm just wanted to raise that issue now at the halfway point.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. That's correct. There is a three-pronged approach, and certainly agree with you that the police enforcement or through the education of police presence has definitely a change in drivers' behavior in any speed zones. So what we'll do is we'll go back and we'll engage the police to take a look at how they could participate in the pilot. I think the police participation, as you mentioned, truthfully, it is through an education program, not through enforcement, because then that will skew the data as to how many people are slowing down or not slowing down. So we do have to complement the police at the regular time, but not consistent enforcement through the entire pilot time. So imagine the police present now in our roads are in spots, in problem areas, as identified, and based on their resources. So it is more, I'll say, spontaneous, sporadic. You want to be a surprise to our residents and our drivers. So we'll make sure that that's also incorporated into the pilot from that perspective as well. So it's not they're literally sitting in these three areas throughout the entire duration of the study, because that would not be a realistic view of how the 50K versus the 40K actually are reviewed. So we'll take that away and incorporate that into the pilot.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. Councillor Adams?
Thanks. I just wanted to verify my understanding. There's no extra police presence being given to these pilot areas, because I wouldn't want residents in other parts of town to think that just because they're not part of a pilot that they're being ignored from a police perspective.
That's completely correct, Mr. Chair. That's, as I mentioned, it's random, as sporadic in different areas that police will show up. It is not specifically police present for the pilot areas, and or even I'll say increased police present in the pilot area, because again, that would skew our data and not be able to report back. Okay. Because we also cannot expect the police to continue that increased present in any of these areas, because they do have a resource to spread across Oakville to enforce speeding.
Particularly if we ended up having 40 all over town, we're not going to all of a sudden have extra police presence.
That's correct.
I'm looking at the chair of the police board.
That's correct. No, we are not. That is not what we are committing to. We just involve the police in the three-pronged approach that Councillor O'Meara mentioned.
Thank you so much for clarifying.
Councillor Haslett-Thiel.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. I just have a couple compliments and then questions. I just want to thank you for the advancement of the PXOs. We're making progress, and that's great news. And I have a few on there that Councillor Giddings and I are anxious to get in 2023. In regards to the traffic calming surveys, when we talked about traffic calming in Ward 3, and as you identified on page 127 of the report, we were fortunate because we had residents who knocked on every door and tried to drive response rate. And my hat's off to them. I mean, they did their utmost, and you can see the results. They achieved it. The ones who were prepared to knock and make it a priority got the response rate. But unfortunately, because they're not a 40-kilometer, they don't meet the threshold. And if we were at 40 kilometers, they would meet the threshold for traffic calming. So I just want to remind you that should we get to 40 kilometers, I believe our agreement was that you would grandfather those streets into determining if traffic calming then applies to them. You wouldn't make them go through all this work again because we already know what the data says. It's just the difference between 50 kilometers and 40 kilometers that's knocked them out of the ability to get traffic calming.
Through you, Mayor Burton. Yes, Councillor Hester-Thiel, we will, since we just did the speed studies on those streets, the petition was completed by the residents, and we are reporting back on 40 kilometer per hour implementation in the third quarter, and we'll in case it's get implemented, we'll keep those results, and those streets will qualify.
So thank you for that. And the other that I just, I'm not sure how my other council colleagues feel, but while I recognize you need a year to see if this is working, I must say that I am concerned that we're getting people very anxious to get their traffic calming only to just miss the mark. And maybe that's the way it's going to be, but when we go into other neighboring communities, they do have a greater amount of 40 kilometer, in different neighborhoods, and perhaps when you come back with the results, we'll have that debate. And my last comment is, we're anxious to have automated speed enforcement because it's a tool that, the chief of police talked to regional council about the importance of having it in place, that it would make a difference. And I know that we're handcuffed to some degree with some additional things that we have to approve. But I am concerned that we get those automated speed enforcement notification signs up so that we do not miss the window of that requirement for 90 days notice to the public that a camera is going to be installed. And I get there's a fine balance. You don't know how long this administration, but it would be a shame that we're going to not give enough notice and therefore we're further delayed because the signage has not gone up.
Through you, Mayor Burton. The promise has mandated us to put those signs up, and speed enforcement camera coming soon signs 90 days ahead of the camera activation. And we will follow that recommendation. At this point, we are waiting for agreement with the Ministry of Transportation because based on the Ontario Regulation 355, which came into force last year, July, we have to get the agreement signed with the MTO to look up the license fees because license plates, because we need to have that agreement in order to issue the tickets because we need to get the vehicle license, like the vehicle owner information. Second is the Ministry of Attorney General agreement that we need to have that because we will collect victim fine surcharge and we'll reimburse back to ministry. Every ticket will have victim fine surcharge included in the penalty amount. These are the two essential agreements. Once we have those agreements, we will be able to say precisely, or at least, more precisely, I would say, that we can put the signs up and we'll be able to activate the cameras. Because those two agreements are essential. Without those two agreements, we cannot run our program. Because we are running our program under APS legislation, not POA court system. Because at that time, when it was program was approved in 2021, Halton courts did not have the capacity to prosecute the SC charges. So most likely we'll be one of the first municipality to operate our program under APS legislation.
Okay, thanks very much. I wish you luck in moving it along.
Thank you very much, Mr. Inman. Councillor Longo?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to thank town staff for the thorough report, but I would also like to put forward the motion to receive the report.
Thank you. That's in order. Any objection? It's a successful motion. Thank you. Council, let's turn now to item 10.2, the 2023 Commercial Patio Initiative. Staff are available should you have questions, but I think we know this really well. Would you like to race each other for the honor of moving it, anyone? Councillor O'Meara, you win the foot race. Thank you. Any objection to the motion? There being none, Councillor O'Meara, a successful motion. Thank you very much. We also have staff available should you have questions on the report for the progress and financial directions of Oakville Ready. Councillor Adams? Thank you, Councillor Adams. Let's see if you have a successful motion. Any objection? Councillor Haslett-Thiel, you have your hand up, I think, but I'm not sure.
I do. Thank you, Mayor Burton. My one question on Oakville Ready, and I fully support the motion and moving forward, is in the elements of the their engagement with the public, has there been any additional changes to highlight the personal responsibility individuals have around reducing their carbon emissions, whether it's a checklist, whether it's apps, whether it's, you know, here's what's in your control? Are those elements being incorporated in the Oakville Ready, the future workshops?
Yeah, perfect. Through you, Mayor Burton. Yeah, we take the opportunity year-round to go out and educate the public, put on workshops, and let them know how they can contribute to both mitigating their impact on climate change and also adapting to what we're already seeing with our future climate.
Okay, thanks very much.
All right, let's find out if Councillor Adams' motion is successful. Any objection? Councillor Adams, that passes. You were also a success. Council, that brings us to 10.6, skipping one. That brings us to 10.5, the notice of motion. So there was a motion, notice of a motion given January 30th by Councillor Chisholm and Councillor Duddock to express our support for the bid by the Oakville Blades to host the 2024 Centennial Cup at the 16 Mile Sports Complex. This is the National Junior A Championship hosted by Hockey Canada. Councillor Chisholm, I understand that you had something to do with the Blades once in your life, and I don't see any conflict here if you'd like to speak to this motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. When we built 16, this is with the intent of having what you call provincial and national championships at this location, and this is a prime example of having a what I call a Canada-wide event at the center. As you know, we had the major bonspiel at 16. This is another opportunity. It's also good for tourism for Oakville with respect to a lot of teams coming in, which will come with parents and team representatives and so forth. And I think there's a very high-level program and event that it would be wonderful to have in Oakville. So I'll just leave it as that. It is going to be an exciting event, and I'm hoping we can facilitate it.
Well, thank you. Let's see if your motion is a success. Is there an objection to the motion? There being no objection, I'd like to exercise my right as a member of council for a recorded vote, and in the name of efficiency, I'm just going to ask the clerk to record the names of all the members of council on the motion. Any objection to that? None? Super, thank you. Let's go to 10.6, the two-wharf vessel replacement. Council staff have given you a report asking for direction. Councillor Longo has suggested the following: that staff fund the deficit using town capital reserves for the purchase of the two-wharf vessel, estimated to be $425,000, and two, that staff bring back a business plan in consultation with key stakeholders with recommendations to ensure the long-term financial viability of harbors. The recommendations will include the fee requirements to ensure all harbors infrastructure is maintained in a state of good repair and funding and available to replace all harbors assets at the end of their useful life, including the current and future replacement two-wharf vessels. Is there any objection to this motion? Councillor Haslett-Thiel?
So I have just a question. Are we, in that recommendation, will we be receiving how they will pay back the $425,000?
This is not a motion that reads that they would pay it back. This is a motion that reflects the fact that over the decades, the town was, we didn't collect enough. We didn't raise the fees enough over the years, and And so we're, if you will, we're making up for the error and patching the bucket so that it doesn't happen again.
So my additional questions are then, have we done this for other organization? And trust me, I want them to have the vessel that they need, and I understand it's important, but I'd like to just understand the precedent that we're setting, not in terms of advancing funds, but not expecting a reimbursement of funds.
Through you, Mayor Burton. First of all, Two Wharf is a unique circumstance in terms of the services they provide to not only the voting community, but the community as a whole. But I'm not aware of other programs that have a similar type of, where they haven't funded their own services, I'll say. But Two Wharf is different. I do need to say that. It is kind of a unique circumstances. So to find a comparator similar to Two Wharf, I'm having difficulty doing that.
Councillor Dudek.
Thank you. Through you to staff, can you remind me, do the user fees that we secure, are they not supposed to be in payment of the harbor investments we have? In other words, should this be something that we look to increase user fees for the boaters, given that it's directly associated with their recreation?
Through you, Mayor Burton, I think that is what this motion speaks to, that going forward, there is a fee right now that the boaters pay for Two Wharf. I don't have it in front of me. I think it's $26. We will bring back a bit as part of the business plan, a recommendation on what that fee needs to increase by in order to ensure that there's sufficient funding to replace that boat at the end of its useful life.
Okay, and maybe you can give me a better understanding. When I listened to what the mayor had indicated, he was saying that the fault lays on us as staff. Oakville, the town of Oakville didn't collect enough. Like, who was the one who decided what the reserve should be for a $100,000 boat 10 years ago?
Through you, Mayor Burton, the boat, as the report indicates, the price of the boat has increased significantly, far more than what we would have envisioned back in the day. So we will have to look at that and look at options on how to ensure there's enough money in there by raising the fees. But I think what's happened, the original boat was much less expensive and the new one is so much more. So we are going to have to take that into consideration going forward.
Okay, I just want to gain a better understanding that it's something that we didn't do that we're trying to resolve, is what you're saying.
If I can just add, I think what we're doing through you, Mayor Burton, we had anticipated the costs whenever the boating fees were put in place, but it was the cost of that boat have increased so significantly that now we need to look at it again as we do the harbor's business plan going forward in terms of what's an appropriate amount to collect. We had anticipated, but just not enough. Costs have increased so significantly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dudek. Councillor O'Meara, Councillor Chisholm, Councillor Elgar, Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Worship. I'll just be brief. Just some clarification on the word harbors in the number 2. I'm getting a little confused as to what that's with reference to. So the recommendation to ensure the long-term financial viability of harbors. Is that everything in the harbor, or is that the name of the boat? I don't understand what harbors is.
I think the councillor's indicated to me that his intention was that the entire harbor's operation be and continue to be self-sufficient, and that the fees reflect the need to do that.
Okay. So we're talking about everything under the harbor in this recommendation right here. So is there anything outside of Two Wharf that we haven't thought of or we need to, that we're throwing into here that's encompassed in harbors that I'm not aware of then?
Through you, Mayor Burton, no, what the motion speaks to is that as we do that business plan, we will be looking at ensuring that there's sufficient funding to keep the assets in a state of good repair, bring the reserve up to an appropriate balance.
Okay, then the other thing I would ask then, and I don't think we have to have it in here, but can we please ensure that we are speaking with the boaters and the boating community during this process? Because they seem to think this is a one-way street all the time, and we just raise fees and do what we want, and we don't consult with the people who pay for it. So I would appreciate if we could ensure we do that. That would be very helpful for especially the councillors who have the marinas in their wards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Worship. Councillor O'Meara covered what I was going to ask, so I'll just defer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. That brings up Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. Through Mayor Burton. So when I look at the report, in 2000, the boat we bought was $100,000, $100,700 apparently, and we collected so far we've collected $475,000 to replace a roughly almost $1 million boat. So we're shy $475,000. So this motion tonight, we are saying, okay, you can take it out of the piggy bank, $475,000, but we're not saying at this point it's going to be on a tax levy. We may be using money from a tax levy now, but right now we still might be getting it from the people who are at the mooring slips, I would think. Is that correct? Where if we do it now, the current mooring for this apparently is $26 and would drive it to $80 a slip. Is that what the cost would do to recover right now if we go forward?
Through you, Mayor Burton, if we were to issue debt to fund the shortfall of the $425,000, we would have to raise the tow wharf fee to approximately $80.
So that works out to $54 annually to a person who has a boat and a slip. So for $4.50 a month, that would be basically like a Starbucks coffee is what we're talking here. Like, this is where I'm having trouble with the numbers that we're even concerned about it. A $4.50 a month additional cost. Is that what we're dealing with here right now, tonight?
Through you, Mayor Burton, I think staff has provided two options for you to consider in terms of moving forward with the purchase of the new vessel for tow wharf. One option is through funding it through capital reserves. And if I understand the motion correctly from Councillor Longo, you would then look to rectify future purchasing of a boat through the business plan and the Harbour's master plan. That is one option. The second option that is in the report is that we look at paying for it through debt, but recovering that through an increase on the boaters' fees. And so the numbers you have in the report are, I think it's about $26 now that they pay, and it's $80. So yeah, those are the two options that are in front of you in terms of how to move forward with the vessel.
Okay, so we're talking basically somebody who has a boat, and they're not 12-foot aluminum rowboats here we're talking about, but people that have boats in the slips right now would only have to pay $54 a year extra?
That's correct. That's the understanding we have now.
That really helps me understand it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Councillor Adams?
Thank you. I wanted to clarify what I read in the motion. So the last part of the motion says, including the current and future replacement tow wharf vessels. I read that as we're asking for staff to come back with a business plan that could include fees that would cover the need to replace this current vessel, including recouping the funding that we might provide them through the reserve. So just because we're not issuing debt is there a reason why we can't recoup the funding if we use reserves instead of debt? So in the staff report, you provided two options, fund it from reserves or fund it from debt. Is there a reason why we can't fund it from reserves and still recoup the funding?
Through you, Mayor Burton, if I read that correctly, if we were to do that, we would have to look at how much we need to raise the fees, not only to cover the cost of the new vessel, the shortfall, but also to ensure that there's sufficient money in future.
That's correct. So when I read that council requests staff to bring back a business plan in consultation with key stakeholders, so with tow wharf and maybe Harbour's members, with recommendations to ensure the long-term financial viability of Harbour's, I read that as come back with a fee proposal that will cover all the assets of the harbors and their need to be renewed. And that might also include the need to repay the $425,000.
If I could suggest, in the report itself, when we had looked at the various options, we had only considered going forward in terms of paying for the future costs of TILWA. I would actually look to council's direction and perhaps the movers in terms of what is meant by that, because you do have those two options in front of you.
Okay, and so the issue, I mean, to me, the question was, are we issuing debt or are we just going to go to our reserves and fund it from there, but we can still get the money back? And I think that was Councillor Elgar's issue that he was kind of speaking to. And part of my question is, I'd like us to go and talk with Two Wharf and the Harbors groups about how we do that recovery, because the staff report isn't explicit about when that increase would be required. Does it get feathered in? Do we need to go straight to $80, or do we do it over a number of years? I mean, because we've done that previously with the Harbors groups, increasing the fee over a period of time, right?
We could do it over a number of years. We've done that with the new dockage.
Right, and so that's why I suggest having a business plan and having staff come back with a recommendation around how those fees might need to change. I think we have time. We don't need to make a decision tonight about what that is. Does that make sense?
Councillor, I have good news.
Okay.
I think you're right. As it's written, you wind up with all those options in your report, and you can make the decision at the time. The councillor inadvertently wrote it the way you'd like to see it, which is the opposite of what he told me he wanted to do. And that's just an accident of drafting something, you know, a few hours before the meeting. So why don't we see if the motion will pass as written, which gives, I think, satisfies both Councillor Elgar and yourself on this matter. And I suppose maybe Councillor Hazard-Thiel also.
Mayor Burton, if we refer this back for the next meeting and get more information on this more detail, is that going to impact purchasing the boat that we want to put the order in now? Is that what the problem is currently?
Through you, Mayor Burton, yes, that would be the issue. We do need to make a decision tonight.
So it would be very good, simple decision if we just say hit it with $54 a year or $4.50 a month on the people that have slips.
That is one option before you.
How many people are renting slips that have addresses other than Oakville, percentage-wise? I'm not looking for a number. Ballpark.
I would look to the Director of Parks to see if he can answer that.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Burton, to Councillor Elgar. We're going through right now renewal of all the vessels, but typically within the inner harbors, we're about 80% in town and about 20% out of town. And at the Bronte Outer Harbor, it's around 60% in town and 40% out of town.
I thank you for that information. And maybe I need a little clarification. What I'm talking about, this $54 per mooring location, is that to pay the $475,000 back to the town from the piggy bank?
Yes, that would pay the debt charges,
right.
Principal and debt charges back to the town.
That's what I was looking for. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Duddick.
Thank you. I just wonder, I'm confused here because I keep hearing different scenarios. You're saying the existing motion incorporates paying back the amount that we're paying for the boat currently? Is that correct?
Councillor Duddick, yes, as it's written in a way to do that. the discussion that the councillor had with some of us before the meeting was not to do that, but rather to pay it through the reserves, not recover it from anybody, and plug the hole in the bucket with the, to discover what the number would need to be to plug the hole in the bucket. If you want, as it's written, if the mover doesn't change it, you're going to wind up with a report that says, here's how much you would charge the boaters to pay back the reserve fund, and here's what you have to do if you want to provide for the future. Or plug the bucket. Or as I say, I think accidentally or otherwise, everybody's wish is about to be granted. May I put the motion and see? Any objection? Pardon? Oh, where you go?
So just for clarity, when will we get this report back? Because there's no timing on here. And my recollection is that the harbor's master plan is further out in 23, possibly into 24. I just want clarity of when we would get this back, approximately.
Through you, Mayor Burton. We had intended to bring the report back on the business plan for the overall harbors when we had some resolution on the outer harbors from the federal government. And so that's in a year or 2 years time frame, which doesn't help the situation here. What I think we can do is if you're making a decision to ensure that the current and the future costs of the two wharf is on to the boaters, then we could report back on how we could roll that out. Councillor Adams, for example, spoke to phasing it in. What's the overall cost on that? So that would be the type of report we could bring back, which would say how we do it. But it needs to start with how do you want to fund that? The options in the report were through the capital reserve or onto the boaters. If your direction is onto the boaters, then we can bring a report back on how we roll that out.
So I guess so I'd look to you, Mayor Burton, for some clarity. So we have a motion on the floor. Some of that, including the current and future replacements, you're right, it makes me feel a little more comfortable. But I also, CAO Closey, would you like this motion amended for that direction?
Councillor, I have a suggestion. Some of us wish to make a decision it's very clear to me that this motion delays. You'll still want to make that decision when it comes back. But if somebody were to amend this motion by deleting the words current and then adding a sentence saying the replacement cost of the present vessel should be charged, words to the effect of charge the existing boaters the amount indicated in the report immediately. That would be a way to do the mending later as is appropriate and get your wish to put it there now.
I would have, it would have to be a friendly amendment for Councillor Longo.
Well, who knows? Why don't, I'll take it that you move that amendment. You don't need a second. I'm going to discover the objection from Councillor O'Meara right now.
I'm sorry, Your Worship. I would have to object to that at this time because it's not just the boaters who have a slip there. It's the boaters that pay to park as well that come, and we got to figure out how to charge them because every day who bring their trailers with their boats and go in there, they should be paying to TORF as well, and not just the boaters who have slips. So it's a little more complicated. The people at the who have canoes and the way. I mean, there's a lot more to it than just per mooring slip divided by X amount gives you the dollar. So I think we might be missing a few low-hanging fruit. And if you want to talk about out-of-towners, it's the people who park, in particular in the Brawny Harbor there, and park their boats and go out, and they're the day trippers who end up crashed up against a rock somewhere that TORF has to go and rescue, and they get away with not paying. So we probably need to have staff look holistically at this rather than just to do it quickly.
So, Councillor Elgar, is there any chance you, on hearing that, you'd like to withdraw your amendment?
I'll withdraw. I will. Yeah, it's not worth it at this point, based on what.
Councillor Chisholm and Councillor Giddings, would you like me to put the motion to a vote, or would you like to suggest something else?
What I just want to ask a couple of clarity questions, if that's okay with you, Your Worship, before we put the motion up. I'm looking at the Appendix A it's called SARS. What does that stand for?
Search and rescue.
Search and rescue. Okay, so all those search and rescues, I'm just trying to say, are they tied into boaters within the two harbors?
They're taskings from the Coast Guard, Councillor, so they may or may not include our lost boaters. It happens sometimes that Two Wharf is the best or closest available vessel to go search for somebody else's lost boater. So that's the plain answer to your question.
Okay, so the logic would be that if we increase the boaters, and there's more to it than that, with respect to increasing to $54, this is just a very segmented group of people that have this service available to them. Is that the outcome of this? Is that Two Wharf is tied into the two harbors? Or is there a general thing to save people on the lake?
Two Wharf serves our harbors and our boaters, and occasionally they come to the rescue when they're the closest vessel and the Coast Guard calls them. And, I don't think there's any way to anticipate where they're going to come from. They could be coming from across the lake. But I don't think, I would suggest to you that that's not, those are rare and those are few and far between, I believe, compared to the work that they do for our boaters.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you.
All right. Councillor Giddings?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with Councillor O'Meara. There are going to be people that are canoeing and bring card toppers and windsurfing and paddlers and everything else. So I think it's going to be tough to charge those people. But if we were able to, if Councillor Longo was acceptable, have a fairly high percentage for the people that are docking there, but realizing that we will have a responsibility for visitors and paddlers and fisher people, or someone that falls off the pier, to assign a certain percentage to them, not to muddy the harbor waters.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. The beauty of the motion by Councillor Longo is that it leaves for staff to bring back those percentages and suggestions for council's decision later. And with that, Councillor Longo, did you have a final remark?
Yeah, just thank you, Your Worship. To the question, I guess, of the type of taskings, they've gone up 77 to 73 last year, or in 2022. There is a mix of the type of people that are being rescued, if you will, if it's boats, but there are a higher percentage of paddle boaters who are now going out there and getting stranded, people in canoes, personal watercraft. So it's a combination to Councillor O'Meara's comment about we do need to talk to the stakeholders. The reason I put in the motion was to talk to stakeholders before a definitive decision as to how the charge is done. But I think the urgency to actually put the money down now in order to get the vessel ordered is now, which is why appreciating the decision today. The hope, though, is that this vessel is going to last 20, 30 potential years, and it's a different craft than the current one. Just to confirm, and I think CAO Closey, if you can confirm, The original purchase was 23 years ago. It was $220,000, not $100,000, if you can confirm that. But over time, with inflation, et cetera, that's where the number is today, based on the RFP that was released. So, TOWARF is indicating that that number may be incorrect, but if you can just check that for the record. But it doesn't matter. The point is we need to vote now on ordering of the new one. And the comment about stakeholders, I think, is important to try and look through how that then is funded on the go forward in order to be able to do any type of replacement, not only for this, but other aspects of the harbor.
Thank you, Councillor Longo. Mr. Mark, did you have something to say?
Through you, Mayor Burton, I just wanted to confirm the original cost of the boat 23 years ago was $100,000. I went back and pulled the report when council did approve it back then.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Haslett-Deal.
So my only I'll support it as written, so long as what I'm hearing you say is that in the report that comes back, it will come back sooner than waiting 2 years, that it will be holistic in nature, respecting the advice of my fellow council colleagues, but it's not like we are going to have some, while we're looking for a holistic report, we're going to get some level of interim report that says, here are some options that we want to pursue. Is that?
Through you, Mayor Burton, yes, in essence. If I can say the first sentence that's in the second recommendation or resolution, the first sentence deals with the long-term plan, which we'll bring back in 1 to 2 years. I think you need to separate the second sentence from the overall resolution, because we would bring back an interim report. In essence, what you're saying is fund the purchase of the vessel through capital reserves, come back with a report that tells us how we'll fund that through the boaters' fees and how those options are to roll that out, whether it's phased or some other means. So I think that's what you're telling us to do. So you need to separate those two sentences because they're two different actions. One is the broader business plan for the harbors, and the second is how do we deal with this one aspect right now?
All right. Council, if I understood the CAO, I think we should add to the end of this second clause about future replacement, the current and future replacement of vessels. I believe the words would suffice if we said, and fund the vessel, and fund the new vessel through reserves. Is that what you wanted? Yes. Nancy says yes. Jane says yes. Does everybody say yes? May I put the vote? Any objection? There being none, that carries. Thank you, everybody. Council, could I have a motion to accept and approve the report from the Special Committee of Council re-citizen appointments for the term of council 2022-2026? Councillor Adams, any objection? There being none, that carries. Thank you, everybody. We need a motion to rise and report. I bet you thought that would never come. Councillor Elger, thank you for the motion. Any objection? That carries. I rise and report the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on consent items 8.1, 8.2, 7.3, 7.4, and 7.5. Confidential consent items 9.1, 9.2, discussion items 10.1, 10.2, 10.3, 10.4, 10.5, and 10.6, and confidential discussion item 11.1, as noted by the clerk. May I have a mover and seconder for the report? Councillor Shi and Councillor Grant. Is there any objection to the report? There being none, I declare it carried. I thank you, everybody. And look at that, it's 10 p.m. and we didn't have to go past the hour of 10:30. Is there any new business to come before? This is a category called new business. We're going to get to requests for reports, of which I have several. Councillor O'Meara, new business.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to remind all of the residents in Oakville and my council colleagues that Taste of Oakville is on right now. February 15th to March 10th, there are some fantastic menus, fantastic restaurants are taking part all across the town and at great deals. So get out and take your loved ones or even just somebody you don't love and maybe enjoy a meal. So it's a great time, it really is, and it supports our businesses in a time where they generally always see a bit of a lull. So please, you can go to tasteofoakville.ca and check out all the restaurants and the menus. I also want to just recognize two incredible Oakville initiatives that are finalists in the Heart of Ontario's Tourism Recognition Awards. Downtown Oakville BIA is a finalist for the Innovative New Experience category for its augmented reality holiday hunt. It was fantastic, and it's an honor, and it's such a great recognition for them. And the second organization is the Taste of Oakville Organizing Committee, which includes Visit Oakville, Downtown Bronte and Kerr BIAs, the Chamber, and the Oakville Center for Performing Arts, and they're finalists for the Partnership and Collaboration category, which I think speaks very highly to Oakville and the organizations we have in here. And again, the 2022 Taste of Oakville event was what they were recognized for. So the winners of those are going to be announced at the 2023 Southwestern Ontario Tourism Conference on March 7th. Coming up, so fingers crossed for them. We really love the collaboration, and we hope for good things and success from those groups moving forward. So thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara, for all those news bits. Councillor Nando?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just on a quick note for condolences, I'd like to say on February 6th, a 7.8 magnitude earthquake struck Turkey and Syria. Since this devastating event, more than 51,000 people have died and 24 million people have been affected. On behalf of Ward 7 residents, Councillor Chi and myself would like to extend our sincerest condolences to all the communities that have been affected by this devastation. Our thoughts and prayers go out to those in Oakville and around the world that have lost loved ones. Councillor Chi and I will be hosting an evening of solidarity tomorrow night at Town Hall from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m., along with organizations from the affected communities. We hope that you'll be able to join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nanda and Councillor Chi, for this worthwhile initiative. Councillor Knoll?
Thank you, Your Worship. Two quick things. Well, one quick and one maybe just slightly not quick. The first quick one is congratulations to the Canadian Caribbean Association of Halton. They're coming to the conclusion of Black History Month, and I know that everybody around this table has attended one or multiple of the events, and I want to congratulate Andrew Terrell and his team for some fantastic events. I was most enthusiastic about the event that we held a couple days ago, the Jean Augustine story, which was wonderful to meet Jean Augustine and to hear all about her history here in Canada and her legacy. So congratulations to all, and we look forward to next year's Black History Month. The second thing is I'd like to make a presentation this evening to Councillor Janet Haslett-Thiel on behalf of the Oakville Public Library Board. Janet just concluded her 4-year term or sentence, depending on your perspective, as a member of the board of the Oakville Public Library, and she will not be returning this term where we welcomed, oh, he's not here, there he is, Ray Chisholm to the board. But I just want to state that during Janet's 4 years on the board, she brought a great degree of oversight and I guess support for the initiatives of one of Oakville's most well-loved services. While her time with the board was short, the legacy will last a lifetime. And with that, I'm just going to break the rules a little bit, walk over with this. I don't think there's a rule against that. Oh, I thought I couldn't demonstrate. I just set up placards. So I just wanted to present you with a memento of your service on the board that you can hang on your wall. My photo will be engraved later. And this is a little gift from the staff and the board. Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for your service. And with that, I want to thank you, Your Worship.
You're very welcome. I've some more new business announcements. Maybe we'll have to go past the hour for these. Councillor Haslett-Deal, you're next, and then Councillor Lischina.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. That was very touching. So mine is less serious in nature, and I do appreciate our Ward 7 councillors' comments earlier. It is a sad what is happening across the world lately. So on a more happy note, you've all been invited to the launch of GLOW DTO, which is running March 4th to March 23rd in downtown Oakville. And this is a playground of light, an interactive art installation that features luminous musical seesaws, and it invites visitors to co-create when the lights and the music intensify as the planks swing up and down. I hope you'll join us at 4:30 on March 3rd, pending the snowstorm, to see them lit up. And my incredible respect to the talent of the downtown BIA team, the fact that they got a tourism grant, that they've brought this amazing art installation to downtown in what we consider to be the lull season to attract and celebrate downtown in another way. I hope you'll join us. It's a great way to put some light into your life through wintertime, and I will even ride a seesaw with you, and let's see who can go up and down faster.
Psychedelic, man. Councillor Lischina.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to thank you and Council for making the proclamation in solidarity with Ukraine on Friday, which was the one-year anniversary of the Russian war. And I wanted to take a few moments to reflect on this incredibly significant world event. After repeatedly denying that he would invade Ukraine, at dawn on February 24, 2022, Putin did just that. He lied to the world and ordered a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. We all watched what happened next. After failing to break through the capital of Kyiv, upon Moscow's forces' retreat, the world learned of unspeakable horrors. Widespread war crimes in Bucha and other cities and towns were discovered. World leaders saw these with their own eyes. With missile and drone strikes on Ukrainian cities and ground forces entering Ukraine from the north, south, and east, there were doubts that Ukraine would survive. But the resistance and the morale of the Ukrainian nation was strong. Putin's propaganda was not taking hold. In fact, the West was seeing right through him and his cronies. NATO countries and allies united in their support for Ukraine, allowing the brave men and women of the Ukrainian armed forces and territorial defenses to defend their country and to fight for freedom and democracy on behalf of all of us. As a result of this genocidal war, although millions of Ukrainians were able to flee to safe haven across the world, including Canada, millions more became internally displaced, where hearing air raid sirens became part of their daily lives over the last year. So would living in darkness and in cold, through rolling blackouts, without heat and water, because the Russian aggressor would target specifically civilian infrastructure. Despite all of this, the Ukrainian spirit is unbreakable. Babies are born in bomb shelters. Children continue to learn their lessons in basements. Doctors operate in hospitals using generator power. Make no mistake, many Ukrainians have made the ultimate sacrifice, including a member of my family. They will always be remembered as heroes who fought valiantly for their homeland, so that their fellow Ukrainians do not have to live under Russian occupation. What the world is learning now, and yet this has been known by Ukrainians since the 2014 invasion of Donbass, is the level of cruelty and violence that was being inflicted on Ukrainians in occupied territories. The stories from every single liberated city and town are the same. There are torture chambers, concentration camps, mass murders and rapes, torment of children. And the latest reports indicate that at least 6,000 children have been kidnapped and deported to Russia. If Ukrainians stopped fighting, they don't have to imagine what life would be like all across the country under Russian occupation. That is why Ukraine's allies need to scale up their military assistance to break through the current stalemate of trench warfare so that Ukrainians can regain the momentum from the fall and drive the invader finally out of their lands. No doubt Russia is a terrorist state and must be held responsible for this genocidal war and its war crimes. The atrocities in Bucha and Irpin and other cities and towns are now being investigated by numerous authorities, including the International Criminal Courts. For anyone who thinks that there is a peaceful solution to this war, need only look back at history. Putin and his ilk do not negotiate and cannot be trusted. Russia must be defeated, and only then there will be peace. Under the courageous leadership of President Zelensky and the support of allies, Ukrainians will be victorious. They will rebuild their lives and their homes. They will be a shining beacon for the rest of the world of how good overcame evil. Slava Ukraini, Heroyam Slava. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lischina, for that most eloquent speech. Council, I'm going to move now to requests for reports. And there's a request by Councillor Adams and Councillor Lischina that staff report on options to improve the streetscapes on Ontario and Collector roads. Do we have consent? Is there any objection? That's carried. We have a request for report by Councillor Elgar and Councillor Longo that staff review the status of the property at 1094 3rd Line and report back to Council by May 2023 with an update on the future of the lease at this property. Do we have consent? Is there any objection? There being none, that carries. Could I have a mover and seconder for the bylaws? Councillor Longo, Councillor Adams. This is that the following bylaws be considered read and passed. Bylaw 2023-3, 2023-20, and 2023-27. Any objection to the motion? There being none, the bylaws are considered passed, read and passed. And that ends the work for this meeting. And it's been terrific working with you. I think I'll leave you with this this amazing comparison that you saw earlier in the budget discussion. City of Mississauga, overall tax increase, 6.08%. City of Burlington, 7.52%. Oakville, 3.79. So I think you can be proud of what you've done. Good night. We're done.